Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon joins me, and we are going to finish out NBA offseason grades. 13 teams remaining. We're going to zoom through all 13 teams. There's very little news outside of the unfortunate passing of Don Nelson, certainly an offensive innovator across the NBA who certainly with pace principles, spacing principles, changed the way that we look at offense in the NBA. So rest in peace to Don Nelson. But we're going to run through offseason reviews today and grades and kind of dig into everything that we've been doing over the course of the last week. Bryce, what's going on, man?
Yeah, obviously thoughts and prayers to Don Nelson, his family, and everybody there. Yeah, 13 teams here to finish off. I got a nap in today on this Sunday afternoon before the start of school, and then we start football preseason conditioning tomorrow. So I have a 4:45 a.m. alarm ready to go all week, and so things are about to get busy over here. But it's exciting to get back into school and football and all of that. But also excited to talk through these final offseason reviews.
Hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, we do these live every Sunday over on YouTube. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like button while you're here. We appreciate everyone for coming through. Podcast plan over the course of the next couple of weeks as a heads up. So I'm going on vacation. I will be gone for, a little bit here. So we have a couple of podcasts that we're going to do. We will certainly be live on Thursday as usual. Then we will have 2 Sunday shows each of the next 2 weeks. So they will be the top 25 defenders in the NBA. Bryce and I really love digging into defense and love digging into the nuance on defense and everything like that. So you guys also really enjoyed those videos and enjoyed those everything last year, those episodes. So we're going to do those. Still working on a few things podcast wise to try to figure out what our schedule is going to be after that. But the end of August, the last 2 weeks of August, basically will be the all defense videos that you guys really seem to appreciate every offseason that we do. So please hit the subscribe button. You will know when those go live, period. So Bryce, we have a couple of different ways that we could sort through these last 13 teams for offseason grades. We have 2 really big trades to discuss. We have both teams involved in the Giannis deal and both teams involved in the LaMelo deal. I would say those were, certainly 2 of the biggest trades of the summer, 2 of the 3 biggest trades of the summer, along with the Kawhi deal. We could go through those 4 teams at the top and then sort through everybody else, or we could go through like we have been division by division, even though the transitions might get a little bit funkier when we go back and forth to talk about each team involved in each trade. So what is your thought on how to handle this?
I just want to keep going division by division. Like that's how my brain works. If you would like to start in the Southeast where we have 3 teams left and then jump around, if we start with the Heat or the Hornets, I'm okay with that. But I would prefer let's knock out the Southeast division. Let's knock out the rest of the Eastern Conference and then finish with the Northwest division in the Western Conference.
See, this is the reason I ask. I always know that you have specific ways of looking at these things and I don't want to throw you off.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so let's start with the Miami Heat.
Let's do it.
The Miami Heat executed the long-standing Giannis Antetokounmpo trade. The full deal, Giannis and Bobby Portis for Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Kel'el Ware, Kasparas Yakashonis, the number 13 pick in the 2026 NBA draft that turned into Nate Ament, a 2030 first-round pick swap, and first-round picks in 2031 and 2033. Those are unprotected, as well as a second-round pick in 2033. Additionally, they re-signed Andrew Wiggins to a 3-year contract. They brought back Simone Fontecchio. They signed Tim Hardaway Jr., and they lost Norman Powell in free agency to the Chicago Bulls. So, big summer for the Miami Heat. Just a lot that happened across the board. Really, this grade comes down to what you think of the Giannis deal at the end of the day. Like, that's all that matters here. Did you think the Giannis deal was a positive for them, or do you think that they still aren't good enough? Do you think that they can compete at some point with the Giannis trade being what it is, and given how many assets it cleared out? I am much more positive on this and bullish on this for the Heat than what I think many people are. I think that Giannis is still exceptionally good, is still one of the 5 best players in the league in all likelihood, even though he missed a good portion of this season. And I think this will be his age 32 season.
Yep.
I think that they kept just enough to be competitive this year, and then should be able to maintain competitiveness moving forward long term. Like, I am excited about a Giannis Bam Adebayo front court with Andrew Wiggins. That should be pretty exceptional on defense, in my opinion. Then you have enough shooting between Tim Hardaway Jr., Bobby Portis, certainly kept Nikola Jovic, certainly have Simone Fontecchio, who was not awesome last year, but Pele Larson, I think, is somebody who has been up and down as a shooter, but has been quite effective as an overall NBA player because of how quickly he thinks on the court and because of how physical he is on defense. Speaking of defense, I really like Drew Smith on defense as well. I think that they're like just good enough to be a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference at the end of the day this year, and then we'll see what it looks like in the playoffs. But man, if anything goes wrong injury-wise with Giannis and Bam, I think it becomes a pretty significant problem in a hurry, I think is the way I would put it. But overall, I am much more positive on this grade than what I think a lot of people will be.
The dunker spot, Steve Jones and Nekias Duncan would be disappointed in you for not bringing up Ryan Conwell a single time in that 5-minute conversation about the
Ryan Conwell.
No, very good episode. I was trying to find a way to get in your appearance over on the dunker spot into today's episode, early into the episode, because I thoroughly enjoyed listening to you guys draft your most intriguing rookies. And Conwell
I
came
love
up.
those guys. Yeah, it's funny.
Awesome
like
job.
I said at the start of that episode, like that's really the only basketball show that I will listen to. Like I'll tune in for Simmons like occasionally if I hear that something has gone off, and like I listen to Russillo because Ryan and I are close. But like, you know, real basketball like only shows, like it's really just Steve and Nekias. I think those guys do an awesome job, and I'm all for them having like the most success humanly possible. But yeah, no, Nekias was very excited about Ryan Conwell.
And I actually agreed with what you brought up in terms of really liking Drew Smith. If you look at some of the numbers, Drew Smith is one of the more disruptive defenders in the NBA, like a guy that can really, when you talk about the possession battle and all of those things. But yes, the dunker spot, awesome. I loved how you talked about pre-show. I think you said they were talking about the Jazz or something pre-show, and I just couldn't help but think about our pre and post-show conversations that often revolve around the Jazz or the Raptors or the Hornets or whoever. So love it. I agree with a lot of what you said, Sam. To me, it was like, as I went through their roster, I felt like maybe there's like, I wish they had one more rotation player I really believed in. But ultimately, I gave it an A because you did get one of maybe the 5 best players in the NBA, maybe the top. Like Giannis could be MVP next year if he's healthy and things come together right. I think they can put a heck of a defensive starting lineup on the court. If you wanted to go Mitchell, Larson, Wiggins, Antetokounmpo, and Bam Adebayo, that is just ridiculous and probably has just enough floor spacing. And then you're bringing off the bench Drew Smith, Tim Hardaway Jr., who I think is really, really good pickup for them. I still like Bobby Portis. You talked, Jovic and, Fontecchio, etc. And the other thing I believe, Sam, they are still like $10 million below their first apron hard cap. And they do have a few ways in terms of they have some of the non-tax left. They have the biannual. They have a trade exception. Not that they can make a huge move, but I think that they have some ways that they could add another piece to the roster this year if they feel like that's what they need. I also do think that this probably gives them a 3 or 4 year window. And so like, I'm obviously taking that into account as well. I don't think they're the favorites in the East this year, But man, this could come together in a really positive way, make one more move in season to build out the depth and go ahead and go for it this year. But I also think it gives them, like I said, a 3-4 year window where they're going to be, competing at the top of the conference.
Yeah, 8.9 million left in their non-taxpayer mid-level, and then 5.6 million for a trade exception, actually, that they got last year in the Haywood Highsmith deal, and that expires, I believe, like right around like this week or so.
Oh, is that one
So,
about?
like,
I didn't even look at the date. That's my bad.
like one. Well, they
Oh,
still have the
yeah.
biannual too, but like
6
one
days. Yeah.
thing that I've been kind of wondering if they do is like, okay, if they want to sign Bradley Beal or if they want to sign DeMar DeRozan or something like that, do they look at executing a sign and trade with that team so that the other team can then create like a $5.6 million trade exception,
Sure.
or like a $5.5 million trade exception, whatever they're going to give the player, right? I'm kind of assuming that they're going to end up with one of DeMar DeRozan or Bradley Beal. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Like, that doesn't come from any inside information. It just makes sense to me that they're going to end up with one of those guys, right? Because they need one more depth player. I would say that they need one more offensive creator. DeMar is the safer option in terms of, look, like, just doesn't miss games, doesn't really, he's just very reliable offensively to create what you need. You look at his last literally 5 seasons, 76, 74, 79, 77, 77 games. Beal's probably the better fit on the basketball court from a 3-point shooting, spacing perspective and everything. I almost prefer DeRozan, though, even though it's a lot of mid-range jumpers for a team that has Bam Adebayo and Giannis in the front court. The only reason I say that is because I think they could use like a real, if you're going to start Tim Hardaway Jr., like a great sixth man who can come off the bench and just like get 18 points a game and play 28 minutes a game or whatever, and who's going to be reliable and that they know is going to be there a lot of the time.
Would you start Tim Hardaway Jr. or Pelle Larsson? Because like I brought up the Pelle Larsson aspect just because I'm like, man, this is like a really good defensive team. And listen, Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to try. He's going to be in the right spot. I saw him take a lot of charges in his year with Detroit and all of that. But like, I mean, obviously he's on the floor to really space the court. And I understand the idea. I don't know that it really matters, but it was something I kind of talked myself into today or went through in my head was, which one of those guys do I think makes more sense? I actually wonder if you get a DeMar DeRozan, does it actually make more sense than to start Tim Hardaway Jr., bring Larsson off the bench as a guy that's a little bit better of a defender if he's going to be playing with DeRozan in second unit. So that would just be something interesting to watch with their, starting lineup.
Yeah, I would want Hardaway in the starting lineup because a lot of like the fun Giannis actions tend to revolve around having just like a monster shooter on the same side of the court.
Yeah.
And that way it's harder for teams to double him, or they have to double from the opposite side, from the weak side. I would really want that option as like a same side, like elite level shooter that teams do not help off of. In Tim Hardaway Jr. in the starting lineup. Me personally, at least. I would understand otherwise if they did start Larsson, but me personally, that's what I would envision here. The other thing is, like, you look at the starting lineup. Again, I think this team should be like a top 6 or 7 defense in the league. They have a chance to be like a top 3 defense in the league, in my opinion. They're just so big and so long, and Eric Spoelstra is such a monster defensive coach in terms of the way that he mix and matches coverages and how he thinks about different matchups and things like that. On top of that, Davion Mitchell's a terrific point of attack defender. Drew Smith is a terrific point of attack defender who's very disruptive. Certainly, Pelle Larsson, like you said, is a great defender as well. I think this team should be awesome on defense from the jump. Offensively, it's going to be a little bit of a, hey, we're trying to figure out the spacing here. We're trying to figure out what the best way to let Giannis operate on the ball is, how to let him operate off of the ball whenever other guys have the ball within the scheme. Is it Bam spacing to the corner? Like, Bam took a lot of corner threes last year. Is it Bam spacing to the corner often? Is it teams guarding Bam from the corner? That's right. Frankly, I think is a real question. There's a lot to figure out, undeniably. I think that their wiggle room is going to be okay, we're going to be a really good defense where Eric Spoelstra is mix and matching every night and making life miserable for the other team with how much length and athleticism and everything is out on the court, right? How does our offense look from day one without truly elite spacing around Giannis? Maybe they do. Like maybe Bam is ready to shoot, and Wiggins can obviously shoot, and Hardaway can shoot, and Davion Mitchell has been up and down throughout the course of his career, but when he's going, like he can shoot, right?
Low volume last year, but at 40%. That's what I was going to say, Sam, is there's a world where this all hits. Like Mitchell was low volume, but 40%. Wiggins was at over 40% on 5. Bam actually had the most volume of those guys, well, per game, but was at 32. So to your point here, you have Tim Hardaway Jr. in the starting lineup. There is a world where we watch a game in December and Giannis has all sorts of space to attack with those 4 guys on the court. And then you're still really good defensively. There's also a world where Bam's not knocking down catch and shoot threes. Nobody's respecting it. Davion Mitchell, people are playing off because the volume's not high enough. And we're questioning the floor spacing around Giannis.
Well, and on top of that, like here's the other thing here too. So Miami last year played this scheme that Noah LaRoche brought in where it was no ball screens, basically. It was we're isolating, we're spacing 5 out, we're doing everything that way. I'm interested to see if that continues, I guess is what I would say, because it makes a little bit, and look, as Tyler Hero came back throughout the year, they started to run more ball screens throughout the year, right? But early on, it was like very, very little ball screen action. With Giannis and with Bam, does that make as much sense? Without the elite level spacing across the court where teams might feel like they can just dig off and help off, does that make as much sense? So that's where I'm still trying to determine what I think the offense is going to look like. I'm not sold one way or another on the offense. Like it could be great. Like Giannis is, again, one of the 5 best players in the league. Bam, I thought, was very good on offense last year, at least through stretches. And obviously Wiggins can attack closeouts and knock down shots, and Tim Hardaway Jr. is a real shooter. And like they have offensive talent. It's just going to be interesting to try to figure out how all of that is going to sort together and even what the scheme looks like. Like that's honestly, if there's one thing I'm looking at in the preseason in terms of like, okay, I want to hear what the reports are out of training camp. I want to hear what is happening, on the court in training camp. I want to watch preseason games. It's Miami, and I want to see what they're doing offensively, schematically, more than anything. Like, I don't care about the results in preseason. I want to know, how are they approaching basketball in the preseason this year?
That's a great point. Like that will be a team that'll be really fun to get kind of, and they won't have everything in by that point, but you'll be able to see at least the idea of Spoelstra and his staff in terms of, are we going to get really creative with all the different ball screen combinations we can run and the way we can use Giannis? Or are we going to ask Giannis to, try to adjust more to what we saw last year? And it's a great point. I think you're right. I think ultimately, sounds like you do, that they're going to be good defensively. They're silly, or they're standing in the Eastern Conference as a real contender next year, I think comes down to the offense and if they can really find what works well for them.
Okay, I went A- for the Heat in terms of offseason.
I gave it an A.
Yeah, totally get it. Look, I think that there is a downside here if the depth just ends up being so poor and Giannis ends up, not being able to stay healthy in the latter stages of his career. But I think it was a good deal. I think it was the right deal for them. They gave up a lot, undeniably, but I think that they did the right thing going for Giannis. Okay.
I agree.
Let's go to the other team that made a big deal in this division now, in the Charlotte Hornets.
Yep.
The Charlotte Hornets, the 2 big things that they did, they traded LaMelo Ball and Josh Green for Naz Reid, an unprotected 2033 first rounder, 3 first-round pick swaps, and 3 second-round picks. They generate a $40.7 million trade exception there, and that was all part of a 4-team deal where they included the Julius Randle, Nick Claxton trade as well. They also traded Miles Bridges, a bad 2029 first-round pick that is the worst of 4 teams, 3 of whom are like really contending right now, at least. And a 2027 second round pick for Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and an unprotected 2033 first round pick. They also re-signed Kobe White to a 3-year, $74 million deal. Believe that's really it, on top of using their 2 draft picks on Christian Anderson and Hans Steinbach.
Sorry, I was reading through their draft capital. Did you mention the Dorian Finney-Smith trade?
Sorry, they also acquired Dorian Finney-Smith and acquired 3 second-round picks within that deal.
Using the non-tax MLE, which I do think is at least important, but that's how they acquired him.
No, I agree. It is important. They have a loaded roster right now. Their offseason is not over at the very least. Like, they have to figure out what they're doing with all of their roster spots. I think that as of this moment, they have 17 guys signed. And I believe that the expectation, at least, is that Dorian Finney-Smith might not be there, at least according to like some reporting I've seen. And then they have to figure out, like, do we keep Pat Connaughton as a veteran presence? Do we, get rid of somebody via trade? What are we doing?
There's not a whole lot of names here, right? Unless you start going to like Tinjon Salon or Trey Mann. So
yeah. So this is actually like kind of a difficult grade for me, to be honest, because from an asset perspective, I think they did about as well as they possibly could have in both a LaMelo trade and a Miles Bridges trade. The Miles Bridges trade straight up is like an A+ for them, to me. That is the best individual deal from a value perspective that I think I saw a team make this summer, where they just like totally fleeced the other team, right? The LaMelo deal is complicated for me. I think that they did great value-wise to get what they got. LaMelo was the guy that like really stirred the drink for what was, I don't know, one of the 5 like most exciting teams throughout the back half of the season last year. They're not even remotely close to being as good.
We had him all on All NBA, Sam. When we didn't think Cade Cunningham was going to be available to make All NBA, we did that before that ruling came down. He ended up, I think, the 15th. He was my 15th player. I don't know if he was your 15th or whatever, but like, yeah, he was very Cade much in the discussion.
He was the 16th player for me. Like,
same
in All NBA. I thought LaMelo was awesome last year, and he was so good. I also think that they made the right decision on him selling when they did because of his injury history. Like, LaMelo is unfortunately a guy that has missed a lot of time throughout the course of his career for, really just lower body injuries, right? The 3 seasons before this past one, where he played 72 games in 2025-26, 36 games, 22 games, 47 games. So to me, you really consolidated the asset here by selling high, when if he gets hurt again, I think it actually becomes somewhat difficult to move him. On top of that, like, there is NBA teams league-wide are mixed on how they feel about LaMelo. I don't think that's a secret by any stretch. But last year, I thought he was a monster. I thought that he was clearly the guy who stirred the drink, like even more than Con Knipple, even more than Brandon Miller. Having said that, it's very clear to me that this ownership group and this front office group want to create an organization that is like filled with very serious individuals and like highly competitive human beings. And you can see it in who they've drafted since they have been in place under Jeff Peterson. It's Con Knipple, it's Sion James, it's Ryan Kalkbrenner, it's Hans Steinbach, it's Christian Anderson. Like, I can tell you guys, the intel on all of those guys is absolutely immaculate. Like, there is no concern across the board on like any of the guys. Liam McNeely, like any of the guys they drafted, they are all in on drafting high-level competitors, high-level character guys, everything like that.
Can I speak to that real quick, Sam? Just real quick, because this was like one of my actual takeaways from Summer League. Every year there's a team that stands out. 2 years ago, it was the way the Raptors defended and how like they really got after it, full court disruption, blah, blah, blah. this year, of all the teams I watched in person, Charlotte was the team that stood out the most, just in terms of the all-around engagement, intensity, the players on the, like, to me, and I wasn't looking for this. Like, it just was like, oh, wow, like, this is different than most other teams. And to me, that speaks to exactly what you're saying here. Like, it's an organizational top-down approach all the way to the Summer League team and Summer League roster.
Right. So I think that in doing all of this, Charlotte, to me, under Jeff Peterson, in this ownership group and everybody that's there, I think they've been one of the 5 best front offices over the last 2 years. Well, look, I think it's like a little bit easier to tear down and to get assets than it is to build up. We'll see what it looks like as they continue to build and they select the right players and everything like that. So far, so good. Like, the rookie class last year was awesome with Con Knipple and Zion James and Ryan Kalkbrenner, but we will continue to evaluate that, obviously. But I think that they've done an amazing job of accumulating assets, selling at the right times, and they are now one of the most asset-forward organizations in the NBA. Like, that's just the reality of where they sit now. They have a ton of draft capital moving forward, both in the first round and in the second round. And on top of it, they have 2 guys in Brandon Miller and Con Knipple that, I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like those guys are at least going to be like borderline all-stars. Con has a real chance to be more than that, I think. Brandon Miller is going to be really dependent on how he learns how to finish and everything. But I don't know that either of those guys are like legit number 1 guys. And LaMelo last year was a pretty good facsimile of that. While also being able, like, if you look at the on-off numbers, like, without LaMelo, they fell off a cliff for the most part. And those 2 guys without LaMelo fell off of a cliff. So this team is worse this year. Like, I'm not totally convinced that they're going to be in the play-in tournament this year, to be honest. But the question is, as we go through this and discuss this now with Kobe White, right? And Kobe White, for what it's worth, the on-offs were not as catastrophic when Kobe White was on, but were not quite as good as when LaMelo was there. So A, it's a big bet on Kobe White. And B, it's a big bet on, is taking a small step back now the right decision in order to take a big step forward in the coming years. And that to me is probably what they did. And that to me is what makes the most sense, right? Because I think that this team, between all of the guys that they have, between Miller and Khan and Kobe White and Naz Reid, and, you know, you can talk about the rookie class from last year with Kalkbrenner and Zion James, and you can talk about Christian Anderson and Hans Steinbach, and plus they have Moussa Diabate, whose contract situation is going to be really interesting this year because they have to make a bit of a decision on, you know, how do we handle that moving forward, given that he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year who's not extension eligible. And we also just drafted Hans Steinbach and Brian Kalkbrenner, obviously. I'm just fascinated how they handle every single piece of this moving forward, because last year was so exciting. And I think that you can see very clearly as well that they're trying to play a specific style. They want to play 5 out. They want to have, or at least 4 around 1, let's go with. They want to have different defensive, versatile markers that they hit. They do an amazing job hitting the defensive and offensive glass. They max 3-point rate. They do a great job under Charles Lee of picking up the low-hanging fruit. But I'm not sure they're going to be able to create offenses easily this year without LaMelo. So I think it's a small step back for hopefully a big step forward is the vision here. And that's why I'm going to give them a really positive grade, because I think that even though I have my questions, I do think that this is probably the right way to approach it.
Yeah, I ended up moving my grade up a little bit as I went back through all of these teams today. And part of it was because I know people don't like this right now, and I understand it, I get it, but they do have so much flexibility and an ability to build this thing forward. And if they had any doubt that the combination of LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller being good enough to lead them into a title contending window, then this was absolutely the right time to make this move. And I do think in the meantime, they're still going to be a competitive team. And I also think there's a world where they have everything in place other than that number one option. And you do have to execute that. But Sam, they have so many different ways of executing. They have the $40 million trade exception that you mentioned, but they also have a bunch of salaries, especially if they want to do it sooner rather than later. Like you could just go Grant Williams, Dorian Finney-Smith, like that's already almost $30 million. And that's expiring money, by the way. And you maybe you add Nas Reed, like they can get to any number they want.
You could add Salon if you want to too. Like
sure, I'm just
to 35 million on expiring money if you do Salon, Finney-Smith, and Grant Williams.
Yeah, I'm just like they have so many different ways of doing it. Like if the other team really likes Kobe White and they think that that's a good contract and it's descending, you could get Kobe White in the deal because maybe you're replacing him and you don't want that amount of contract coming off the bench for you or whatever. And then all of the draft capital they have as well. Now, in fairness, this front office has to do what I think is sometimes the hardest thing, which is making that move when it's time to be aggressive, getting it right, all of those things. But they've absolutely put themselves in a position, maybe more than a lot of teams, to do it in a bunch of different ways. And so if you trust in the front office at all, I think as a Hornets fan, you have to feel good that this can bounce. This doesn't have to be a 3-year thing. Maybe it's not this year. Maybe it is at the deadline. Maybe it's next offseason. But the path to that can be relatively quick, and you can kind of see how they can get there. So I ended up positive as well, even though, again, I want to reiterate how good LaMelo Ball was last year. But I still think this is going to be a fun, competitive basketball team. And I also do think it's a little bit of a bet on Charles Lee. Taking LaMelo Ball out of the equation makes his job harder, but this roster's not void of offensive talent, where if he's as good as I think he is in terms of putting players in the right position and those type of things, they should still have some pretty good success offensively with all of Kobe White, Nas Reed, Brandon Miller, Con Knipple. You have Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and then all of the young players. We'll see what they get from the center position this year. Somebody like Liam McNeely had a really good summer league, Christian Anderson. So I'm still very high on this team. And again, I ended up with a B+ grade, which isn't normal for me whenever you trade your best player. Like it wasn't easy for me to get there, but I just like the position they're in too much to be negative about this offseason.
Yeah, like I'm assuming that the starting lineup is Kobe White, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, Nas Reed, and Moussa Diabate, and then they're going to bring Grayson Allen off the bench, Royce O'Neal off the bench, whatever they're going to do a backup center between Kalkbrenner and Steinbach. I think there's a non-zero chance that Steinbach's just going to be better than Kalkbrenner from the jump this year. We'll see. Obviously, Sion James will be really useful as well. There's just nowhere for Liam McNeely to play is the funny thing after a monster summer league. But yeah, I gave him an A- at the end of the day.
Sure.
I think that at the end of the day, I have to do this based off of the way that I think about basketball. At the end of the day, they decided that LaMelo Ball was not the guy that was going to get them to the promised land, so they sold high. And they have all these interesting young guys like Brandon Miller and Con Knipple and all of the various rookies they've drafted and second-year players they've drafted over the last 2 years. And they want to create a stable infrastructure around whoever is going to be the number one guy. Maybe Con Knipple becomes that, right? But I think that because they went and decided, no, we don't have the number one with LaMelo to play as like a number two, and it's going to be even harder for us to find a number one if we're competing at a 45 win pace, because I think they probably would have won 45 games this year. I have to give them a positive grade. I ended up with an A- because I like that they decided we are not good enough. Let's go try to get flexible again and get good enough while we have all of these young players that are interesting on our books for the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Miller averaged 20 a game last year. He still has to get more efficient, like around the rim, getting to the rim, free throw line, all of that. Con Knipple averaged 18.5 as a rookie. What if there's a world where those are your two leading scorers and You need your Derek White type of player or a Drew Holiday type of player or something, right? Like that's the third star that you need, because these two guys are just big. Like they're both averaging 20 to 25 a game. You don't need necessarily a big time scorer. You need a guy that can come in, settle the offense, be a really good two-way player. Like I'm about them finding that out, like getting that answer with those two guys and giving them a little bit more room to see what the ultimate ceiling is for them individually on the offensive end. I'm not saying it's going to be that, but I can take a year to find that out if I'm the Hornets. And then if it's not, you go make the move for the big superstar. If it is, then you go find your Derek White, Drew Holiday, whoever it may be. And so again, I have a hard time being upset's not the right, but being disappointed or being negative about what they did this offseason, while still, like, we're going to get to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and spoiler, I gave them a very positive grade as well, because I think LaMelo Ball is coming off a really good year.
All right, let's move forward. Let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks. So the Atlanta Hawks brought back CJ McCollum on a 1-year, $20 million deal, 2018, something like that. Can't remember off the top of my head.
21.
Brought back Jock Lawndale on a 1-year, $14 million deal. Traded for Lou Dort and Ryan Nembhard for Zachary Rissachet and 2 most favorable second rounders. They also brought in Aaron Wiggins for 2 second rounders. They also traded for Devin Carter and got a second round pick for taking Devin Carter. I thought this is totally solid offseason. I gave it a B. I have no strong notes. I thought it was a well decided offseason by Ansi Saleh and everybody involved.
I gave this a B+. I actually really like this offseason. I really like this roster. They also drafted Kingston Flemings, which I thought was the right pick there. They drafted Zuby Ejiofor, which, I've given my thoughts on who I would have taken. But if that's the type of big that they want, I understand it. And then they got Henri Vesar in the second round as well. And so I think it's a really good roster. Again, has a lot of flexibility in terms of expiring salaries, like McCollum, Dort, Lawndale, Buddy Hield. You're at, was that $40-60 million there? And my biggest thing is you get another year to see what Jalen Johnson can be. Can Jalen Johnson take another step or not even necessarily, can he be a perennial top 15 player? Like, is he year in and year out in the all NBA conversation? Can he improve his 3-point shooting? Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming off a career year. Is that what he actually is? Or is there another step? Does he take a step back? I'm all about the Hawks finding out, especially with those two guys, but really especially Jalen Johnson, and then positioning themselves at the deadline to go make the move that they feel like they need to make to round out that roster. I think they have all of their first round picks. I guess next year's is a little bit funky. But so they definitely not like, they're not plus with their first round picks. But again, they have the contracts to make a move like that. They have future firsts to make a move like that. And so I like what they did this offseason, and they continue to add young talent with the draft class as well.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what I think happened here was they figured out this is a team that entered the offseason with like as much flexibility and quote unquote optionality as anybody else in the league, right? And they figured out that there was not going to be anything that they could really do that pushed them into a different echelon of team. There wasn't a deal to move up in the draft because the Clippers and nobody was selling outside of the top 4, or nobody selling within the top 4. And then outside the top 4, like teams like the Clippers and teams like that, they put like way too high of a price tag on those picks. So there was no way to move up in the draft. And then free agency wise, like the thing that they probably needed was center, right? Like if you were looking at a position, hey, it's nothing against Onyeka Okongwu, but Quinn Snyder seemingly wants somebody who's like a big, massive body on the interior. And, Isaiah Hartenstein didn't hit free agency. Like other guys like didn't hit free agency that made sense, right? So what they did was they basically rolled over their flexibility from this offseason to next offseason, right? They continued to buy into guys like Lou Dort. They signed CJ McCollum to a 1-year deal. Like you said, they have like $60 million in expiring money between McCollum, Dort, Lawndale, and Buddy Hield for next year. They can make all sorts of crazy trade moves this season. They can just go get a free agency move next offseason if they want to. To me, it was just all about, hey, we're maintaining flexibility here. We didn't really find the deal that was out there for us. It did, it made more sense for us because we're a lot closer to contending than somebody like Chicago is, right? For us to like go buy real players at the end of the day, as opposed to trying to continue to maintain assets by, buying and bringing in, bad players to get draft picks or anything like that. There weren't a lot of those deals in the market as it is. We've talked about that, but this is all a rollover this summer at the end of the day. Like they decided we're going to roll over what we did last year into this year, and we're going to see what it looks like. I'm fascinated to see what their roster like structure is. I'm guessing that they start McCollum, Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jalen Johnson, and Yeka Okongwu. But they have Kingston Flemings now. They have Lou Dort now, obviously. Aaron Wiggins was a useful acquisition as well. I'm just fascinated to see how they handle all of the different things that they have at their disposal now.
And I think it's still going to be a good team. I think they're not going to get talked about because they didn't make a big move. And I don't know that Jalen Johnson is really talked about being that level of player, even though he's coming off a third team all NBA season where he averaged 22.5, 10 and 8. McCollum was awesome for them all year, including had a good playoffs as well, even though he didn't shoot extremely well from the 3-point line. I know it was just 6 games in that series with the Knicks, especially early in that series. He had some big moments. But I think this is, I don't know if I haven't gone through it yet. I don't know that it's a team that I think is going to be in the top 6, but like this isn't a non-playoff team to me. It's not a non-playoff roster. My guess is I'll have them definitely in the play-in. And again, having not gone through it fully yet, like maybe right there, like trying to get the 6 seed or something like that.
Yeah, like in the East right now, the teams that I would say are ahead of Atlanta, definitely New York, definitely Philly, definitely Toronto, assuming the Kawhi deal goes through. I mean, there was a whole other report by Pablo late last week after we recorded, so who knows? I mean, we'll talk about Detroit. I think Detroit is likely to be ahead of them at the very least, just due to like Cade Cunningham existing. The Cavs, I think, will probably finish ahead of them in the regular season, and then like I'm probably higher on Miami than other people are, so that's 6 right there.
Yeah. So no, you're right. They're more in the next group. Yeah, it's definitely like more the play-in.
They could easily get into that like 6 seed realm for sure. It wouldn't blow my mind, but it's the like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 range to me.
I agree.
More than it's the, we're going for the top 6 guaranteed like Philadelphia or like New York is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it was all about rolling over flexibility. And I think that it was the right call for what they needed to do and for what presented itself as an option this summer. This is a team, again, that they're trying to make a star trade. Like that's where this is going to come down to. Like, can they go find a star trade that makes sense for them? And if they're able to do that, this team will look awesome moving forward. And if they're not able to do that, then we'll see. And by the way, like I didn't even mention the Indiana Pacers in that group.
Yeah, no.
We will definitely talk about here in a minute.
Top 6 is way tougher than what I thought as just scrolling to. So like they're definitely more in the play-in group of teams.
Yeah. So yeah, I went with a B for the Hawks. I thought that it was a reasonable offseason. I don't think they took a step forward. I don't think they took a step back. It's just going to be them trying to figure out, can we go get the star trade that we need to accentuate what Jalen Johnson brings and what everybody else brings to the table on our team.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go to the Northwest Division now.
Okay.
Let's do the Utah Jazz first.
Okay.
So the Utah Jazz, obviously their biggest offseason acquisition, Darren Peterson, number 2 overall, but they traded Walker Kessler for 2 unprotected first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. They brought in Jackson Hayes and Josh Okogie as 2 like well-rounded bench players, backup center in Hayes, defender in Josh Okogie. They brought back Yusuf Nurkic, who I assume will be their starting center this year with the departure of Walker Kessler. And they brought back Mo Bamba as well for depth at the center position. I don't know. This felt like they made all of the right moves to me this offseason. The Kessler deal presented itself. They decided, all right, they're way overpaying for Walker Kessler, or what could be a massive overpay for Walker Kessler. Let's do that. Let's lock that in place. All right, we're going to get Darren Peterson. Darren Peterson's the perfect fit for what we need on our roster right now. We're going to take him over Cam Boozer. We're going to take him over Caleb Wilson.
Yeah.
I thought that the Nurkic deal made total sense. This was just a really good offseason. I thought they handled everything well, and I think they're ready to jump into that play-in, maybe even back end of the playoff picture right now.
So this is another tough one for me in terms of, I agree with you that the offseason was good. I gave it an A-. I did. But at the same time, I'm not quite as high on what they are this year than I was going to be if Walker Kessler would have came back. Because I think they might be, I think they're going to be really good offensively. There's a chance this is just an incredible offense. With Will Hardy just doing what he does, and then having all of Keontae George, Darren Peterson, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren, Nurkic, who I think plays into the scheme and system really well, Ace Bailey coming off the bench, Bryce Sensabaugh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I also think there's a chance it's really bad defensively because there's not a whole lot of super positive defenders on this roster right now, especially on the perimeter. And while Jaren,
it's one really positive defender right now.
Any on the perimeter? Okogie.
Yeah. Okogie, yeah, but Okogie's a bench player, so yeah.
Correct. Yeah, so I agree. So my point here is Jaren can only do so much. The task of helping out with all of those below average perimeter defenders is a lot easier if you have Jaren and Walker Kessler. And so that's the only reason why I'm a little bit lower on them in general for the 26. I think there'd be a play-in team where if they would have brought Walker Kessler back, I probably would have been with you and others that they may actually just be a straight up top 6 playoff team. And maybe they're so good offensively in the regular season, they still are a top 6 seed. But that's the only thing in terms of for this year. Well, completely understand. You just can't not do that Walker Kessler deal. They got so much for him, and they're going to have a lot of contract decisions of their own coming up. They have one right now in Keontae George. So I fully get it. It does just make him a little bit lower for this upcoming season, not having Kessler, because I worry about where the perimeter defense is at.
Who do you think got a better deal for their player? The Clippers for Kawhi Leonard, where they got Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, or the Utah Jazz for Walker Kessler, where they didn't have to take back any money and got back 2 unprotected first-round picks, 2 pick swaps?
Probably Utah, just because, if I'm the Clippers, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with Brandon Ingram here. It may end up not mattering. And then I don't have a whole lot of, I'm not sure what Grady Dick ends up being in the NBA. I'm not sure if he ends up being, something that ends up being a positive from that trade. So to me, they got 2 players that aren't in their future, and you got to figure out what to do with Ingram and his money, where Utah just, nothing, you know what I mean? They get these future draft picks. So yeah, I would say, and Kawhi's a better player than Walker Kessler significantly.
The fact that I'm asking that question is the point. Kawhi Leonard was one of the 5 best players in the NBA last year. Walker Kessler is a really good player. I'm all for it. I think there's a chance he averages 18 and 12 this year for the Lakers. It could be that. I would think it's probably going to be a little bit less than that, but he might be incredible, right? He's not Kawhi Leonard. He's nowhere near Kawhi Leonard as a basketball player. And We're talking about they got about the same, maybe a little bit better than what the Clippers got in a deal for Kawhi Leonard for Walker Kessler. That's crazy. That's just absolutely crazy. And that's why when you look at where we were on the Lakers in terms of their grade, it was This is just a total crapshoot and we don't know. And now we're looking at it for the Jazz and it's like, no, this is the right call. Even though they're going to be slightly worse next year, this is the right call. I gave them an A-. Like, I thought they did a great job this summer cashing in on an asset. Obviously added Darren Peterson, which was not like an easy decision, by the way.
Agreed.
Like, I think they made the right call for their roster build to take Darren Peterson, have multiple creators with him and Keontae George, both of whom can run off of screens, who can be really effective in the Will Hardy offense. I think it was so valuable for them to make that choice. I thought it was a home run. I thought that they did everything that they were supposed to do. And now it's just all going to come down to, is Darren Peterson the number one guy? Can Ace Bailey grow into being the number one guy? But they have multiple outs currently on their roster as players who could be like, have some number one player on a roster equity, right? This isn't like fit like Charlotte, where I guess that Khan has some equity there. I guess that Brandon Miller has some equity there, but like, I feel way better about Darren Peterson having number one guy equity than I do about either of those two. And I'm fascinated to see what this looks like.
Sam, I think this could be a top 5 offense in the NBA this year. Like, I was thinking through that today. I'm not sitting here going to just like make the argument for it or like try to convince everybody. But if you told me by the end of the season, that's what they were, I think there's a chance based on just like if they're healthy and all of that. And this was a team like that was 22nd last year. So it's not like they were 12th. And like, I realize this is kind of a pretty bold statement, but I mean, they can truly go 5 out. They can run all of this stuff off ball, all of these different things. Again, Sensabal's a guy that can really score off the bench. So I'm just interested to see where they're at defensively, but the Kessler deal, it was just too good. Like I kind of want to be like, man, I wish they just would have kept him. And then we could have seen this team with like some interior defensive infrastructure with him and Jaren. It was just too much to say no to. Like, they had to make that deal.
I think that's right. Okay. The Portland Trailblazers. They traded for Ja Morant, for Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. Also lost Matisse Thybulle, who went to the Lakers. They brought in Brandon Carlson, Micah Potter, Jeremy Sohan, and they also brought back Rob Williams on a 3-year deal. So this is one where we talk about like teams that have a infrastructure and have an idea of what they're doing and have a plan, right? The Jazz are really leaning into Will Hardy offensively and what they're doing with Will Hardy, where they have a ton of spacing, multiple creators, guys who can fly off screens, everything like that. Charlotte is like really leaning into what Charles Lee does. They have an overall organizational philosophy. I can't sit here and tell you what the Portland Trailblazers organizational philosophy is right now. Last year, I would have said, coming into the year, certainly under Chauncey Billups, oh man, they were like a really hard-nosed defense. They're going to try and be a top 5 defense in the league with Drew Holiday and Tamani Kamara and Donovan Clingan and everything like that. And then they got the massive lead from Denny Avdia, and he was 16th, I think, in actual All-NBA voting. Now they're taking the ball out of Denny's hands more consistently with Damian Lillard and Ja Morant coming in.
Thank you for leading with Denny. I get so frustrated, Sam, when I hear people talk about all the primary creators and they mention Denny last. I'm like, no, Denny's the most important one in this equation. So sorry, that's been my soapbox recent. Everybody will think Scoot and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, Denny's the one that I'm most frustrated that they decided to bring Ja in to play on the ball. Sorry, I've been frustrated by that recently.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And on top of that, you then also have like the whole ownership situation and the, arena situation that's playing out in the public, obviously right now. Look, I'm still assuming that nobody's going to let Portland move from Portland, but who knows? Like the owner just seems like he is out of his depth in regard to the NBA. Certainly has been wildly successful in the NHL. It's just a different beast in the NBA as somebody that's a fan of both of those leagues. Totally different personalities, totally different expectations, totally different money levels. Like it's just a totally different ideal across the board. I was not positive on this offseason. I did not really think Ja Morant made a ton of sense for them. We've talked about them throughout the years. Like, are they like one of these teams that might make like a panic new owner move with Ja Morant? Like that was a team that I brought up quite often last year as a, hey, like, are they going to do this kind of thing? And it ended up being that. And they didn't even have to give up a lot in Chris Murray and Jeremy Grant. They got off of a bad Jeremy Grant contract, frankly. It's just, I don't love the way that all of the pieces fit together. They're going from starting last season as like a defense first organization to then obviously the Chauncey Billups thing happens and they have to completely change over and it becomes Tiago Splitter's team. Tiago Splitter leans into playing like super fast, like the Paris basketball style of play. If they were going to keep Tiago, like I actually kind of understood what they built roster wise a little bit more. I actually think Mike Inori is a really good coach too, but like Mike has never run a team before and I would assume he's going to be able to figure out what to do on offense, but yeah, it's just a complicated deal to me. It's a really complicated deal because you have a lot of guys on the ball around Ja Morant who struggles to play off of the ball. It just feels like a collection of talent as opposed to a like team to me right now.
So I looked it up today. So here I gave it a C-, and part of it, like it's not even that I dislike. I like a lot of the names on this roster. To be clear, like we've been
that's what I think too. Like we love Drew Holiday, we love Donovan Clingan, we love
positive on Scoot Henderson. Sam, like we've probably been the most positive podcast out there on Scoot.
Way
Henderson.
More positive on Scoot. Yeah,
I like Micah. Like here's my problem. So there's 14 players on standard contracts, some of them not guaranteed. I don't know what Sohan's is. Like, if you want to add Sohan to it, fine. But like 14 players, you know how many of those players are centers and not like kind of centers? These guys are all listed as centers. You know how many are centers of the 14?
I mean, like, depending on if Potter is listed as a center, it's 4 or 5.
It's 5. It's 5. You have Robert Williams, Clingan, Hansen, Potter, Carlson. I realize like Potter can space the floor, so maybe there's some opportunity to play the 4 and all of that. And like, listen, again, I like Micah Potter, so I want to be clear here. Here's the other thing. Then all of Ja Morant, Drew Holiday, Shane Sharp, Scoot Henderson, Damian Lillard, Denny Avdia, which is like your next 6 players outside of centers, all but Tumani. Do you want to know what the lowest percent frequency or percentile frequency any of those players are in terms of pick and roll ball handler or isolations on Synergy? What is the lowest percentile frequency any one of them is in pick and roll ball handler or isolation?
Oh, I would guess that it's like 25.
No, they're all 75th percentile or higher in those 2 categories.
Percentile. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
75th percentile or higher, Sam. So here's what we do. We say, well, Dame Lillard's a really good shooter. He can go play off the ball, but like he was like below 10th percentile in spot ups. I'm not saying some of these players can't do that. Like I assume Drew Holiday can go play more off the ball with Damian Lillard here and Ja Morant here and all of that. I get it. It's just not as easy as what people say. Like it's my thing with Philly also. And we've talked about that a lot. These guys, even Shaedon Sharpe, I don't think people realize how much Shaedon Sharpe has played in pick and roll ball handler and isolations, last season. So the roster just makes no sense to me. Maybe Mike Inori gets in there and he says, Shaedon, you're playing off the ball. Dame, you're playing off the ball. And this all works out. I just have real questions about it. And the roster construction does not make sense to me.
I'm kind of assuming as of right now that their next move is going to be for like another star. Like they're going to try and do something like Shaedon Sharpe and Drew Holiday in like some of the pick capital that they have, because they have all of those Bucks assets still, where they basically own the Bucks draft from 28 to 30.
Yeah.
I'm kind of assuming that that's going to be the move, is that they try and like scrounge together, the money and everything to make it so that they can go get another like distressed asset star. And then it's going to be like, oh, we have Ja Morant, Damian Lillard, Denny Avdia, Tamani Kamara, Donovan Clingan, and we're rolling with that kind of thing. Right now, the roster looks pretty incomplete and messy. The thing is that I think that could change if they make the right star move with some of the numbers that they have.
Sure.
I just don't. I don't think this looks great right now. And the big thing is that I don't trust this owner, and I don't know that I trust the front office totally to make the right decision at the end of the day. I think they have to make a trade at some, like, by the deadline. I think they're going to have to make a trade. Because look, I don't think they're getting here's the other thing too. Like, outside of Denny, I'm going to list off a group of players. Outside of Denny, which of these players do you think has a lot of trade value? John Morant, Drew Holiday, Shaedon Sharpe, Tamani Kamara, Rob Williams, Scoot Henderson, Damian Lillard, Donovan Clingan. I would say that Clingan and Kamara both would bring you like real value, real draft capital, multiple. I don't know if they would bring you multiple first round picks, but definitely more than a first round pick, at least for both of those guys.
Agreed.
The rest of the guys,
not on the contracts.
Yeah, like Shaedon Sharpe is on a deal that is like 80 plus million. I don't think that's going to be seen as a positive contract league wide. Drew Holiday is 36 years old and is 71 million for the next 2 years. I don't think that's going to be seen as a positive contract league wide. Rob Williams just has the injury history, so like they're not going to ever get a crazy amount for him. Scoot Henderson has the impending contract situation, so they're not going to get a crazy amount for him. John Morant, we just saw what he went for on the trade market. Like, they actually have a lot of kind of not great contract guys now either.
Well, and can we also, you didn't mention Denny Avdia, and I understand why, but, and we've talked about
Denny
this.
Is crazy value. Like, he's
no,
awesome.
But my point is that contract is about to get real tricky, which we've talked about multiple times. And, you know, like, I assume anybody listening right now or listening after the fact kind of understands, but that descending contract was really cool until it comes time to extend him. And now they have to figure that out over the next couple of years, how they keep Denny Avdia in Portland on what is less than $12 million next year. So like, they have to, like, do we trust the front office to figure that out and make the right decision there and make the right decisions around the roster to make sure that they're able to keep Denny Avdia in Portland?
All of John Morant, Drew Holiday, Shaedon Sharpe, Tamani Kamara, that's like $120 million locked in for those four guys. Plus, you know, Damian Lillard, that's 135 locked in for those four guys. Then you have Clingan at 10 million the next year, so that's like 145, let's call it. And then Vic Krejci is just not making a lot of money, so like keep his number on the books. I don't know if they'll opt into Hansen Young or not. Like, I don't know if I would, but I'm less high on Hansen Young than they are, presumably. All of this is to say, next year the current salary cap is projected at $174 million. If they want to try to renegotiate and extend Denny Avdia, you basically are giving up Scoot, right? Like, you should be moving Scoot right now
to get cap space next offseason to give him the money and then extend off of that.
If you're not doing that, or if you want to like try to move off the Drew Holiday money when he's expiring, or you want to try to look, they have other options. They don't have to get off of Scoot, but like, you could try to move Shaedon Sharpe's deal. Again, I don't see that as being a positive asset. It's just a very complicated sort of like set of moves to try to sort through at this point. And again, I don't trust this ownership group to figure it out, is where I'm at right now. We have seen nothing from Tom Dundon beyond the fact that he won a title this year in Carolina in the NHL. We have seen not very much that makes me believe that he is going to be an effective owner for the next couple of years, at least. Maybe he learns and like they figure it out and he learns from his mistakes. I think that's like entirely possible, to be honest. He seems like a smart guy. It's just that right now he's making every single wrong maneuver in order to endear himself to a fan base. And I think offseason wise, I gave this a D+ for the offseason. Like, I really did not like the direction that they're headed in.
Yeah, I'd said the lowest I went with any of these was a C-. There'll be a couple of those tonight, and Portland gets one of them.
Yeah, I think this is actually a really good comment. Like, more than anything, the NBA is a relationship business, and Tom Dundon's awful at it. Dirty Dancer said that. Like, that is a big difference between the NHL and the NBA. Like, there are just a wider variety of personalities in the NBA, and some of the personalities are a little bit more mercurial than they are in the NHL. And you just have to be able to deal with the relationships in a different way than what you do in the NHL. That is actually probably the biggest difference between the NHL and the NBA. It's not to say that one is better than the other. I don't think one is better than the other. Honestly, I kind of prefer the NBA, like the fact there is, like, frankly, guys that come from different backgrounds, whereas in the NHL, it's much closer to a homogenous background that people come from, just with more people coming from Canada, more people coming from the Scandinavian countries, more people coming from the northern US countries. Like, there's just a wider group of people that you're dealing with that play basketball worldwide, frankly, than play hockey. And I think that what you see because of that is that you just kind of get a wider array of personalities, and you have to be able to manage those personalities much better, in my opinion, than what we've seen from Tom Dundon to this point.
I had to look up mercurial because I did not know what that meant whenever you said that. So thanks for expanding my vocabulary here today.
All right,
I know the planet Mercury, did not know what mercurial meant.
My goodness. Let's go to the Oklahoma City Thunder, Bryce. The Thunder basically gets 7 second rounders in various deals for Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, and Aaron Wiggins. They add Bennett Sturtz and Adai Mara to the roster in the draft. They re-signed Isaiah Hartenstein to a 3-year, $75 million deal, brought back Kenrich Williams, and then they also lost Brandon Carlson. The key with all of this is that they're now about $7 million under the second apron and are much more flexible than what they were whenever they started the offseason. Look, I think they did as well as they possibly could have if their intention was to get under the second apron. I'm never going to like sit here and give a super positive grade for teams that just shed money, even though in today's ecosystem, it makes sense to do so. Like, I think that the Thunder are probably a worse team for next season than they were this season, having lost Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, and Isaiah Joe, even having brought in Adai Mara and Bennett Sturtz for next season solely. They're probably not as good of a basketball team. So I'm not going in there contending for a title right now. So I'm not going to give them like an A for just shedding money or anything like that. I gave them a B because I think they did as well as they possibly could have in bringing in draft capital when everyone knew league wide that they're going to shed money. But yeah, look, like, are they as deep as they were last season? Absolutely not. So, I gave them a B for doing as well as they could have, but I don't know that it's an overly positive set of decisions that they had to make here as the Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams contracts kick in.
Yeah, maybe I should have taken into account just like what they had to work with, but I actually gave them a C+, which is just like slightly negative, and it is because the championship roster got worse. And I think the counter to this is while Dort, Joe, and Wiggins played like 5,000 minutes in the regular season, those minutes went way down in the playoffs, even with the injuries to Jalen Williams, J-Dub, and AJ Mitchell. And so maybe it ends up not being an issue. I think my biggest thing for them is for a team with all of this flexibility, all of these draft picks, all of this stuff, even with the draft picks they've made, they still have what I feel like is they don't have enough wings. That's my issue. And maybe I'm just like over-indexing this, Sam, but this continues to be an issue for me. They essentially need like 5,000 minutes at the 3. They're only going to play Caruso 1,000 of those minutes in the regular season. And how many minutes can J-Dub play in the or if you get in the playoffs and one of those guys isn't available. So the fact they lost both Dort, who I know is more of like a 2, but like because of how strong he is, can guard 3s, and Wiggins, if they would have had, this sounds crazy, if they would have ended up with Spencer Jones, I think I would have felt way better about this offseason. Like I probably would have given it a B- or a B. I just feel like they have a roster that kind of has a hole in it right now, a potential flaw in it. And because of how they do things, it just is really surprising to me because it's just always been they have so many options and so much flexibility. That should never be the case. And so I may end up being way wrong on this, but that's how I feel about the roster right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, like they ended up in a situation where because they made the finals in 2025 and won the title, they had to pay their guys. And that's what this new ecosystem revolves around is the NBA owners tried to make it so that it was a more parity driven league, and also tried to make it so, in my opinion, that they would stop themselves from making massive mistakes on contracts with the second apron, right? But to me, that what the biggest thing here is, it really is just they got hit by the aprons at the end of the day. And now they have to figure out how they're going to handle the situation. What if I told you they tried to do like Benedict Mathurin for 1 year in the non-taxpayer mid-level or in the taxpayer mid-level spot?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Like I think that the Clippers probably just match a contract for like a taxpayer mid-level on Ben Mathurin. But like, what if the Thunder were like, we'll give the Clippers 3 second-round picks for Ben Mathurin that we acquired in all these other deals, and we'll give Mathurin like a 3-year deal for $20 million where the last 2 years are non-guaranteed kind of thing.
Yes. Here's my thing, Sam. I can get a pretty good 10-man rotation. Like I feel pretty good about that. And ultimately that's what matters. So like, I'm probably being a little bit nitpicky here, but to me, it's like then, and it's not these guys' fault, but like, where's Thomas Sorber at right now in terms of his recovery? And is Nikola Topic going to be able to give them minutes? And again, like, I'm just glad Nikola Topic is like healthy and like everything's okay. Like, obviously he's really went through some stuff here. Mara didn't look great at Summer League. I think Bennett Sturts is probably the one I'm most confident can give them regular season
confident in coming in
of those four. Agreed. But my thing is, I don't know that that's the archetype. Like even with Topic, I don't know that that's the archetype of player they need. They have all of Shea, Cason Wallace, AJ Mitchell, Jared McCain. None of those guys can play the three. And so like, again, maybe I'm getting hung up on something I shouldn't. And I think for most teams, I wouldn't be like this laser focused on it. But it's just a team that I'm like, yeah, they can essentially go out and get whatever they need, right? We praise them for having all of this flexibility. And then I just feel like they allowed themselves to have a hole on their roster. I realize the aprons and ownership and all of that. Like I realize there's context here, but like it's still something I'm worried about for them in terms of a team that is expecting to win a title this year.
I mean, what if they just brought in literally like Ochai Agbaji?
Sure, I would feel better. I know that sounds crazy.
He's free agent. Like, you know, I think they can bring in somebody to make this fine, I guess is my point. Or they can trade for somebody and make this fine.
Again, if they would have kept, if Spencer Jones was on this team right now, I would probably be like at a B-. I think I sound more negative than what I am on. Like, I still think they're one of the 2 best teams in the NBA. Like, I want to be very clear here. But again, make sure you have all of these different backup plans. And I feel like they are missing one really important backup plan right now that, yes, could have been filled by Spencer Jones. Obviously, they didn't have complete control over that. Some other move, whatever. I would feel much better if they had another player that I felt like could play the 3, even if it's just to get them through the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, look, like the 2 things that matter most here, in my opinion, right, is that they did the Isaiah Hartenstein deal. Isaiah Hartenstein to me is now like an underpaid player.
Agreed. Like this is a great point. Yes.
$25 million a year and only $23 million this year. Agreed to take a little bit less money to stay in Oklahoma City. And he is, to me, one of the 15 best centers in the league. Right. This is not higher than that, but one of the 15 best centers in the league.
Yep.
The other thing is, like, I think the draft order like really shook out poorly for them at the end of the day. Like, and they just kind of got stuck on some level where look, like if Yaxel falls, we feel totally different about the
I,
situation.
I had this conversation, Sam, on the uncontested. The problem is I can't fault them. Like if Nate Ament was on this roster, I wouldn't feel any different. I can't be like,
No,
they should have
totally.
taken Ament. You know what I mean? So this is a
Yeah.
good point. This is fair.
Like I think that they probably tried to move up in some respect, didn't get any traction because again, these teams at the top of the draft were really excited about the players in the draft and they priced the picks very high. And it, ended up that just all of the guys that made sense for this roster didn't drop. So they took the best players in Mara and Sturts on their board. And I think Sturts is actually a real help because the two things that they lacked in the playoffs because of injuries to AJ Mitchell and Jalen Williams was ball handling and shooting.
Sure.
Well, they went out and got like maybe the best intersection of ball handling and shooting, who's ready to potentially play this season, because I don't think Christian Anderson is, in the draft in Bennett Sturts, right? So I totally get what they're going for at the very least. Like I think that what they did made sense for what happened. I just think they got kind of unlucky and they got hit by the aprons. So I'm not going to crush them for any of that, I guess is my thing. Like I think that they did fine this summer for what they were presented with.
I guess what you're saying is kind of my point. And again, maybe this is just a me thing, but like then overpay to go to 11 and get Yaxel. Like just pay whatever Golden State is telling you.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if they were,
you know what I mean?
gonna
Like what? Like you put yourself in this situation to have all of these extra picks and all of this stuff, right? Then this was the time to do it. This was the time for us all to sit down and go, man, they gave up way too much to move up one spot, but also sit here and say Yaxel's a perfect fit and is going to be awesome for them this year. Can't believe they have him on the roster. I guess that is kind of my point, that maybe I wish they would have done that. Again, I'm at a C+, so it's like barely below what I would consider an average offseason. I'm not nearly as negative as what I assume this is coming off as. It just like, that's the kind of move I guess I wish they would have made, especially knowing we're not going to be able to do this stuff in free agency. We're going to have to trade off these players to get under the apron. The draft was the place to go be super overly aggressive.
All right, let's hit the Denver Nuggets next. This one will be quick because their offseason hasn't really occurred yet. At least
even if it should have.
Offseason hasn't occurred yet. So brought back Spencer Jones on a 2-year, $12 million deal after an offer sheet with Oklahoma City. Brought back Tyus Jones, signed Marvin Bagley, Alpha Diallo, and Lonnie Walker IV. Lost Tim Hardaway Jr. They still have the Peyton Watson thing hanging over their heads. They're still into the second apron and haven't really made any choices. This is a pure incomplete grade. Like I have no grade for the Nuggets until they make any decisions, and they haven't really made any decisions yet.
I agree. I will just say I have it as a C- right now, just because I do think they've handled it wrong. Like I just think that they should have made the moves to bring back Peyton Watson earlier in the offseason. I really expected us to see either Cam Johnson or Christian Brown traded. I don't know. I could end up wrong here though, to your point, because where this is incomplete, if all of a sudden a month from now or whenever it happens and they sign Peyton Watson to what ends up being an awesome deal for the team, this could change real quick, because then you're bringing back same starting lineup and then Peyton Watson off the bench, or however this would play out, however the starting lineup would play out. It just seems like they've not handled this great thus far. I could end up being way wrong on that though, if they end up keeping him, or I guess there's some sign and trade that could happen where I feel good about what they get back. I don't know. Like I don't feel good about their offseason though. But to your point, it is somewhat incomplete. Very incomplete.
Yeah, I just don't have any. We've talked about them so much over the last couple episodes, including literally last episode. We talked about the Peyton Watson thing. I think this is this place where we can get some time back here in terms of us going long, and we can just call this like an incomplete grade until we know what they're doing with their roster and what they're doing with their apron situation, their tax situation, and kind of go from there.
Works for me.
Okay. Let's go to the Minnesota Timberwolves and finish out this Northwest Division. They traded Naz Reid, an unprotected 2033 first rounder, 3 pick swaps, and 3 second-round picks for LaMelo Ball and Josh Green. They traded Julius Randle in number 28 for the 33rd pick in the NBA draft, basically dumping Randle. and they executed those basically as one deal. So it's the way you can look at it is LaMelo Ball, Josh Green, and number 33 for Naz Reid. Naz Reid, number 28, Julius Randle, an unprotected 2033 first rounder, 3 pick swaps, and 3 second round picks. They brought back Jalen Clark. They signed Ayo Dosunmu to a 5-year, $112 million deal. They brought back Bones Highland. They brought in Trey Lyles from overseas. And they lost Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson in free agency as well. I have no idea what this is. Okay, so my read is that I think that they are a team that will probably be worse in the regular season for having made these moves, but probably have a higher upside in the playoffs for having made these moves, which I think is really all Tim Connolly cares about. But is that the right way to think about it? I guess is, given how good the East is and given how important I think seeding can be in the West, the West rather, I'm sorry. Is that the right way to think about all of this, I guess?
So I gave them a B, which is slightly above average for me. And essentially I respect them for going for it. I think there's a chance this works out really well if we continue to see the same LaMelo. This is what I've always wanted to see with LaMelo Ball, is him not having to be the guy and kind of seeing how he plays off of and with Anthony Edwards. If we see last year LaMelo Ball, and we saw a lot of stretches, I think this could work really well. You still have Gobert. The problem is it has real flaws on this roster. And again, obviously, after going through the Oklahoma City Thunder thing, people probably kind of understand how I look at this, whether you agree or disagree, in terms of championship contenders. Like, I don't know who starts at the 4. I don't know who plays the 4. I don't know what that looks like in the playoffs. I mean, obviously, Jaden McDaniels can do it some. Like, I wonder if Trey Lyles just ends up being the starting 4 for most of the regular season, and then we see what it looks like in the playoffs. Who's starting at
that?
Who's starting?
I assume that they're going to play Jaden at the 4.
Then who else is the starting lineup, though, is my thing.
I'm going to guess LaMelo, Ant, and then I would guess that it's probably Ayo, but like not impossible. It's somebody like Terrence Shannon or Jalen Clark.
Okay.
I think that they're going to play Jaden at the 4. I think they need a 4. I totally agree with you. Like, they have to figure out a way to do that. But like, this is a team that for the last few years, really the entire time Anthony Edwards has been there, actually, I would argue, now having thought about it, the whole thing has been that they've been like a bully, right? They have played bully ball with Karl Towns and Rudy Gobert into Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert. And then they played really big with Jaden McDaniels at the 3, and that's how they made it work. They're kind of small now. Like,
this is, yes. And other than it's like, I do like center. Like, obviously, we really like Gobert. I think Jan Berenjay, like, I'm really excited to see that.
I think Berenjay is going to be able to be like the real backup center this year. I'm not worried about.
Yeah, I think they get 48 minutes of good center play whenever both of those guys are, healthy and available on a given night. Like, I feel good about it. The problem is, to your response or reaction to my Trey Lyles and kind of my thought of like, okay, I know Jaden McDaniels can play the 4, but would really kind of like whenever he plays the 3. And then, okay, let's say Jaden McDaniels plays the 4. Who's the 3 then? It is a little bit small, the roster in general.
And look, like, you can say the backcourt is big, like LaMelo is 6'6" or whatever, and Anthony Edwards is 6'5" and physical and powerful, and Jaden McDaniels is, if they can find a way to get him back to the 3, they're able to play bigger, and Ayo is 6'4", and like Dante is 6'4". Like, they can be big across the backcourt, but you're always going to be playing drop with Rudy out there. Like, I don't think you're going to switch all that often with Rudy as it is. So really, to me, it's how are you going to rebound the basketball? And I don't know how you feel. Like, I feel great about certainly Rudy being able to rebound the basketball at a super high level, but LaMelo has always been, especially for the last 3 years, I would say, not quite as willing to like dig his nose in on the defensive glass as what he was, especially earlier in his career. Anthony Edwards is a like solid rebounder. He's not like some incredible rebounder by any stretch. Like he averages 5 rebounds a game, like something like that. And then Jaden McDaniels, again, for a 3, I thought was an effective rebounder. For a 4, I think he's pretty clearly an ineffective rebounder at the 4. So are you going to be able to end possessions is a real question with this team to me. And then when Baron J is out there, are you able to end possessions? Because that's like a whole other can of worms, just given how skinny he is. I think this team has a chance to be really flexible and awesome in the playoffs. I'm just trying to figure out how they get through the regular season, just with the depth that they have right now.
The other thing I think I brought up whenever the trade was made that I like is, I mean, they've kind of gone all in at this point. Like when you look at future draft capital and all of that, and people could disagree that LaMelo Ball in this roster is what you would want to make your kind of final move. I guess there's an argument you could trade Rudy and Jan Baron J could become your starting center, and maybe there is another move there. But to me, I'm actually kind of comfortable with them going all in now in what I believe is Anthony Edwards' age 25 season with a few years left on his deal. And if it doesn't work, then maybe you have to move into a new era. But doing that when you can still really, really get a lot in return for Anthony Edwards. And so I'm not saying I'm predicting that to happen, 12 months from now or whatever, but I do kind of like the idea of them just going all in right now, and seeing if they can make it work. And then if not, then you have to make some really tough decisions potentially.
Shout out to Connor for the super chat. Ben Simmons or Stanley Johnson to Minnesota. No, we're not. That one made me upset in my head a little bit. Yeah, like to me, I think LaMelo and Anthony Edwards have a chance to be really effective as an offensive pairing. I think the way that those two play together should mesh really, really well offensively, and they should mesh really well offensively with Rudy Gobert. And Jaden McDaniels is like a third option, really is like amazing. I think they're going to be awesome on offense. It is kind of like it's all on Rudy's shoulders. And on top of it, so I really like Jalen Clark on defense. I think Jalen Clark is genuinely like a fantastic NBA defender.
Yeah.
I really like Baron J on defense. Dante DiVincenzo, like seemingly will come back at some point. We'll see. But does LaMelo and Ant fighting over screens all the time against high-level perimeter players, any team that has like 2 real creators, because I assume that they will throw Jaden McDaniels on whoever like the real perimeter creator is, right? And then they'll make everybody else guard down, because part of the advantage of having LaMelo and Ant is that they're big enough to guard down if they need to, right? So you have that flexibility lineup wise. Any team with like secondary creators, you're either putting a lot of pressure on Ant to fight through screens consistently in the regular season, or you're putting a lot of pressure on LaMelo potentially to fight through screens consistently in the regular season. If teams have like multiple creators out there in some way, shape, or form, maybe it'll be Jalen Clark or somebody like that who starts and takes on the secondary option. But I don't know, the really good NBA teams, like if you're playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, you're going up against AJ Mitchell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, like a lot of guys who can create, and they're going to eventually find the guy that they want to find to put through ball screens as a guard. And like LaMelo does not feel like the best drop coverage fit to me with Rudy playing in more of a deep drop, I guess, is where I'm like somewhat worried. But I think there are other teams where this Minnesota team should like obliterate some of these other teams. So it's a weird roster build that I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Well, and the other thing with that, if Jaden's playing the 4, I always make this argument whenever people talk about Asar Thompson playing the 4 for the Pistons, is, well, then somebody has to scale, like now, like what you just brought up there, right? Oklahoma City, let's say they have AJ Mitchell and Shai on the floor, and Jaden McDaniels and Jalen Clark are taking those. Well, now Ant has to go guard Chet, like, so, and maybe he's strong enough to take a lot of those type of matchups. Maybe that's what it ends up being. I think this is a really interesting year for Anthony Edwards defensively, whether it's taking on those perimeter matchups or being more versatile defensively with the matchups he can take because of his athleticism and strength. But in theory, LaMelo is going to take some of the offensive usage off his plate in creation. And so maybe he can be a little bit more of that two-way impact that I think truly vaults him into like a top 5 player in the NBA type of season.
Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing too that we haven't really mentioned, like losing Naz Reid as well. Like that's another piece of the physicality. Naz is like more of perimeter big, but like he's another guy that's 6'9", 6'10", 250 pounds, who's just like a bigger body, right? So like losing Naz Reid and Julius Randle, I mean, in the past, Karl Anthony Towns, I think is a really big factor here as well, where they just are smaller than what they have been. That's the reality. They are a smaller team than what they have been. So, maybe they're more, just the offensive lift ends up being really positive. We shall see. Look, I haven't given a grade yet. I think it's probably a B- for me, just in terms of I don't know what this is going to look like, and they gave up a lot of future facing assets to get LaMelo, but yeah, we'll see. Okay. Central Division next. The good news is that these teams did not do a ton outside of
other
Milwaukee,
than one.
We will start with Milwaukee. They traded Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis for Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Kel'el Ware, Kasper Siakashionis, number 13 overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft, a 2030 first-round pick swap, first-round picks in 2031 and 2033, and a second-round pick in 2033. They also acquired Karis LeVert for Taurean Prince, Gary Harris, and 2 second-round picks. They brought back Ousmane Dieng on a 3-year deal. They brought over Bogi Markovic on a multi-year deal. They signed Gary Trent Jr. to a 4-year, $64 million deal. Oh my God, that did happen. Bryce. Okay. So I think that the most important thing here is that they got literally as much as they possibly could have for Giannis Antetokounmpo from Miami. And I would have done this deal over the Jaylen Brown deal at the end of the day. I think this is a better deal for their future than that deal would have been. I still don't know that. Look, so I guess part of this for me is I have to separate the fact that I would have traded Giannis last summer when he still had 2 years left on his deal, as opposed to this year. I think they waited too long, and I think they should have moved Giannis last year, and they would have gotten more from a team like Houston, who knows, like San Antonio, or I don't know who would have gotten involved in a Giannis bidding war, but I think there would have been more teams involved in a Giannis bidding war than what were there this summer, because he was able to exert his pressure on the situation because he only has 1 year left on his contract. But for this summer, I think they probably did about as well as they were going to do. I mean, look, the Trent thing, I'm giving them like a half letter grade demerit no matter what. I ended up with a B- here for them just because I liked the Braden Burries pick a lot. I liked what they did in terms of getting, at least like a flyer on Ousmane Dieng, a flyer on Nate Ament, like bringing in Kel'el Ware and Yakashonis, making sure those guys were in the deal. It's a funky looking roster right now, man. Like, I assume they're not going to be particularly good. I almost feel like it's somewhat incomplete until we know what they get in a trade. If they move Miles Turner, if they move Tyler Hero, if they move, frankly, like Ryan Rollins is a whole other conversation where we're going to eventually do like the players we're most interested in this year in the NBA, like most interesting trade targets. And like Ryan Rollins to me is very high on the list because he is a very cheap contract and is very good at basketball. I don't know what to do with this. I gave them B- because I didn't know what to give them.
I
So I
gave
just kind of went in the middle.
I gave them a B because similar to you, like I thought it was time to trade Giannis. I thought it was late as you as well, but they still did get, that return. I really liked their draft. Love that they took Braden Burries. I'm really excited to watch him and Ryan Rollins together this year. And as you said, Ryan Rollins is a whole other conversation in terms of that contract and all of that. But I think that could be a really, really fun backcourt if they decide to lock it in long term. And then I like them taking the swing on Nate Ament with their second first round pick. Similar to you, like this probably would have been a little bit better, but the Gary Trent Jr. contract just makes no sense. But I am also interested. Can they trade Tyler Hero at the deadline on an expiring deal? Can they trade Miles Turner as a floor spacing big with, 2.5 years left on his contract when they have Khalil Ware on their own roster? Can they trade, what do they do with Jaime Jaquez? Like, there's just a whole lot of decisions to be made moving forward. Like, do they extend Jaime Jaquez? Do they like him? Can they trade him, on this deal right now? So I think to your point, I think a B is where I'm at. This could go a bunch of different ways. They could end up extending Tyler Hero and trading Rollins for not very much and all sorts of things. And it ends up being a really bad situation, or they can make a lot of really positive moves, going forwards. Excuse me. So it is a little bit incomplete right here. But overall, I don't mind what they did this offseason. And I think probably the draft, especially with Burries, is what got this just slightly positive for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, like part of this too is like it depends on, do they keep Hero? Do they keep Jaquez? The Jaquez one is fascinating to me because I think there are teams that would really want Jaquez right now on 5 million that might have some future ability to extend him. Do they decide to continue to play in the Peyton Watson waters, which has been rumored as well as a potential outcome? And again, like the Rollins thing is so complicated to me because he's not extension eligible, and it is on $4 million a year with a $4 million player option next year. He's going to make 20 million plus next summer, in my opinion. Like that dude's really, really good. So they're in still like this, it's still the transitional phase of their rebuild, even though they've started to accumulate assets already. Like they've done a really good job of getting what they could for Giannis. They're still going to have to figure out how to transition out of that, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah.
If I'm
lots of
them,
big
to be
decisions.
clear, someone asked like, why not just fully liquidate the roster? That's what I would be doing. I would be liquidating the roster.
Yeah, no, I think they should. I guess my point is, will they, like, I would definitely be trying to trade. I think some of them you have to be strategic with when you do it as well.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
I don't know. I wonder if Tyler Hero's more valuable right at the deadline after, God, I hate saying it this way, but like maybe after there's an injury somewhere or a team figures out like, hey, this player wasn't able to step in this role the way we thought. Tyler Hero's scoring, even if it's off the bench down the stretch or something like that, is what we really need, or maybe he just slots right into a starting off-ball guard role. Same thing with Turner. Like, I can't imagine there's not some teams out there that would value his floor spacing still. So,
well,
100%.
To your point, though, like in terms of timing it right, though, like Jaime Jaquez, for instance, right? Kind of a funky player where you have to play like a bit of an inverted.
I would trade him now
to get the most out of him. I might trade him at the deadline, to be honest.
Oh, interesting.
Because you have two guys at the center position who can really shoot in Miles Turner and Khalil Ware, which allows you to like play a really fun, funky, inverted offense with Jaquez.
So you're thinking you can build up his,
you build up his value.
So I was thinking if I'm another team, I'd want to trade for him now because I have to be able to like integrate him into my roster and my system and all of that. Because Jaquez, it does play a little bit of a different style. But to your point here, like it's just, there's a lot of different options here for them to make. They just have to execute them. And it could go the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like if they hang on to players for too long or give extensions or whatever. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very funky offseason. for the Bucks that I think is still mostly not totally done. Like I said, I went B- just because I think that they're not done with what is happening in this transitional phase of their roster as they accumulate assets. And like, here'd be my question: the guys that you're building around long term, because that's really what you're trying to figure out.
Sure. Yeah.
I would say my keepers long term that I'm like centering are Braden Burries. I mean, I would love to keep Ryan Rollins, but I don't know what the deal's going to be there. We'll see. They will certainly have his bird rights and be able to pay him more than what anybody else can. So that's a whole thing. But now I'll ask you these guys. So like Tyler Hero, Miles Turner, Kalel Ware, Kasper Siakashonis, Nate Ament, Hawkes, AJ Green. Like I think all those guys should be available at least. I guess I would say.
I would agree in general.
Like Ament, maybe because Ament.
Yeah, I would. But yeah, I would try to play this out obviously with Ament. People know how I feel on this. Like I would keep AJ Green. I mean, it depends on what the trade was, but I think that's really valuable to like that level of floor spacing is really valuable to a rebuilding roster and young players and all of that. I will say this. I would definitely try to keep one of Miles Turner's or Kalel Ware. I would not trade both. In a league where a floor spacing big can be really valuable, I would keep at least one of those guys on my roster. And listen, you and I are probably a little bit lower than most people on Khalil Ware, not like super low, but lower than most. I think I would, probably try to find if somebody was interested in Turner and then keep Ware. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's really Burries and Rollins and seeing if that backcourt can work and then building things out from there.
Yeah. Okay. So last question here. Is the Gary Trent deal the worst deal you've seen in free agency in X number of years?
Yes. Most surprised. Like I'm trying to think of another one that just made me go, what? Or made me go, there has to be a bunch of non-guarantee as part of this.
I think it's the worst. I think it's the worst, like mid-level non-max contract that I can remember in the entire time I've been covering the NBA.
I probably like had a similar reaction. Like the Jakob Poeltl deal was kind of surprising to me. Just because the amount of money on that one, but like to that point, like there's at least some non-guaranteed on the end of that. So here's what I will say. I had to make sure that I wasn't like on the wrong Shams account on Twitter or whatever. Like I was nervous that I had gotten, tricked by social media whenever that came out.
Yeah, it's a true catastrophic deal in a way that you don't often see. Is maybe the way to put it. Okay, let's go to the Chicago Bulls. So, Chicago Bulls drafted Caleb Wilson, by far the most important thing that they have done all year. They lose Anthony Simons and Colin Sexton to the Lakers and 76ers. They bring in Nick Claxton like basically for free into their cap space. And they signed Norman Powell to a 2-year, $45 million deal with a team option on year 2. They also did an extension with Zach Collins for 2 years before the draft. Yeah. So Caleb Wilson's really good. Caleb Wilson is having the guy that you're building around is the most important thing. That saved me from giving them like a catastrophic grade, I guess. Even though like it was the obvious pick, like at number 4, Caleb Wilson falls to you, you take the best player available, easy. I hated everything else they did this summer. I hated it. I thought that it made very little sense. I think that they should have been so much more willing to take lower level deals on guys like Karis LeVert and pick up 3 second-round picks, right? Like the Pistons clearly were trying to get off the Karis LeVert money, right? They end up doing it, and they have to take back money to do it, right?
Well, one of those guys is
willing to do something like that. You should have been willing to do the Dorian Finney-Smith deal. You should have been you should have been doing those things instead of the Nick Claxton deal. Like, I think that the Claxton one is the one that I struggle with, because yes, they need size and they need a center and everything like that. But he hasn't been very good for like the last year and a half. It's kind of the problem. And you're not really competing. Like, you're not adding him as a guy where it's like, okay, we think he can help us get up over the top, right? You're not a playoff team next year. So why are you adding a guy with 2 years left on his deal who hasn't been all that good yet? At least for the last year and a half, I guess. He's been good previously, but was not good for the last year and a half. Additionally, he's not a shooter. He's not like a perimeter big. Might not fit with Caleb Wilson particularly well. Unless Caleb Wilson just becomes a shooter like we saw at Summer League, which maybe he will, right? Who knows? Like, I'm not convinced Nick Claxton is better than Jalen Smith, is kind of where I'm at. And you just decided to take on $23 million of money for a guy that like might be as good as the guy you think is a backup center, which is why you acquired Nick Claxton. It feels like a massive waste of the advantage they had this summer with the flexibility and cap space. And then on top of it, like, they signed Norman Powell. Norman Powell, like, good player, right? To add like zero assets when you had all of this cap space, and it's not like you went out and acquired talent that will lift you into the playoffs next year. It just feels so wrong, even though we've talked about the fact that there was no like significant cap dump deal out there, right? Teams did it. Like Dorian Finney-Smith, that was out there. The Hornets pounced on it because they were able to. The Karis LeVert deal, another example of one that was out there. The Bucks pounce on it. Good work by the Bucks. I'm kind of assuming at some point that like the Dennis Schroeder deal is going to be available, and the Dennis Schroeder deal will be out there to be able to do as a cap dump, right? I know the Bulls added a bevy of second round picks. I get it that they did that at the deadline already. There's just not a reason to not add more when the other option here is, oh yeah, we're just going to go get Nick Claxton because he exists and is big. I just don't think he's been very good recently is kind of the issue. So like, I guess he's like, yeah, like people can say he's better than what they had. I would agree. He's definitely better than what they had, but that's because what they had was Gershon Yabusele like playing real minutes at center. And that's not all that useful. Look, maybe they can go out and trade Norman Powell deadline and go add more assets, but you look at the way that teams like Charlotte are handling having flexibility. You look at the way teams like Atlanta are handling adding flexibility. They're either staying flexible into the future like Atlanta did, or they're adding real assets like Charlotte did. And neither of these teams, like neither of these deals that the Bulls did that took up basically all of their cap space, added flexibility or added any sort of real like pick value at the end of the day, unless they get seconds for Powell. Like, I don't think you're getting a first round pick for Norman Powell and $20 million a year at the deadline next year.
So this is probably the team you and I are most different on. I definitely understand the Nick Claxton part of it. I actually love the Norm Powell deal. I think he makes a ton of sense for a team with these young wing forwards that want to get to the rim and pressure the paint and all of that. So my thing with Powell is, I think at the very least, he provides real value to their growth and development and playing competitive basketball for this entire season. And in the best case scenario, he does that for 50 games. And then you do trade him for either a first round pick or multiple seconds. Because here's the other thing I will give them credit for. he got a team option. Zach Collins got a team option. Trey Jones got a team option. So they did give at least team options on all of those 2-year deals, where if they want to go back to the cap space route next offseason, they can. Like, I do wonder if Norm Powell is a name at the deadline again that we're talking about for some of these teams. Like we mentioned with Tyler Hero.
I think we will be 100%.
And, but he's $12 million less than Tyler Hero. And so that team option on the second year of Powell's is very important to me. So like, I don't think this was like a overwhelmingly positive offseason. I guess I'm just not as negative because I do like the Caleb Wilson pick. I like the Dalen Swain pick, even though it did not look good at Summer League. I understand that. I personally,
I have no problem with it.
I personally like the Norm Powell deal, and the Claxton one isn't so bad to me that it overcomes all of that for me to be negative. So,
like, it's just like the little things, I guess, that I'm struggling with this offseason, where it's like, okay, you don't add any asset value when you had crazy cap space. You sold the 37th pick or whatever in the draft for Cam Jones and a pick swap down the road, where you've already cut Cam Jones because you didn't want him on the roster and the Pacers wanted him off the roster. I just don't. Yeah, I don't understand, I guess, how you end up with all of this flexibility and you're a rebuilding team and you have no assets to show for it, I guess.
Sure.
Outside of Caleb Wilson, who looks great. Like, Caleb Wilson is, again, like, that's why I can't, like, I ended up with like a C+ to B-. I think I'm going to say C+ because I hated like the way they handled their offseason. But it's hard because like this is the offseason where they added Caleb Wilson and they did like everything else to me that I hated. But Caleb Wilson's the guy. Like, they have the guy now. So
sure.
That's kind of all that matters. Yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling with it a little bit, I guess.
Sure. I ended up with a B. Again, I was not overwhelmingly positive, but felt perfectly fine with it. And Caleb Wilson probably turns it into a positive. I realized that was probably the easiest pick in the draft. I don't know. Number 3 might have been, but one of the easiest picks, but I still give them credit for adding Caleb Wilson to the roster.
All right. Cleveland Cavaliers extended Donovan Mitchell on a 4-year, $273 million deal, player option with a full trade kicker. Brought in Mario Hezonja on a 1-year deal, re-signed Thomas Bryant. They lose Keon Ellis, Larry Nance, and most importantly, Dean Wade. They haven't done anything else. This is a tough one for me.
I mean, it's easy, but
this is a team that in the East is watching other teams get better. And if anything, they got worse. They lost Dean Wade. We're assuming that Harden's going to be back. Like, James Harden will re-sign and that'll be fine. But this was a team that like pretty desperately needed LeBron to come through, and he didn't. So I ended up with a D+ here for Cleveland.
Yeah. I've said it multiple times. The lowest grade I give, for whatever reason, I don't know why I said this, but was C-. Easy C- for me. Actually, I wrote in my notes a title contender that's running back a team that wasn't good enough last year. To your point, they're actually running back a team that wasn't good enough last year and is actually worse right now on paper. Like, I feel like even with their roster, you're looking at a lot of players. I don't know that Donovan Mitchell's coming back with another step, in his game, or Jarrett Allen with another step in his game. I think you're just like, it's got to be Evan Mobley takes that step forward, maybe Tyson off the bench. I guess my point is, it's not like there's a bunch of younger players that were a part of this core that you're expecting real growth from to help and make you better next year. I mean, truly the only addition is Malik Thomas, right? Like, that is, and his Hezonja.
Yeah. But like, Hezonja's on that weird contract that's like non-guaranteed still.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't find a way to spin this super positive for them, at least based off how things have gone right now.
The other thing is here, so they now have Donovan Mitchell locked in for 5 years.
Yeah.
Right. that last year is when he is going to be, I believe, 34 or 35.
Yeah.
At $75 million. And I think it's probably not going to look great for Donovan Mitchell at 34 to 35 years old for $75 million. You had to do it. Like, I'm not going to like ding them for this deal. I think they had to do it. At the end of the day, you have to give Donovan the deal that he's earned as like a many-time All NBA player at this point. But I don't know that it's going to look great down there either.
Well, and here's the other thing. Like, we've talked about this, obviously, with Wembanyama. We've talked about it with the Oklahoma City players. Mobley did have the escalator language and got that. And so, like, his numbers in the year that Mitchell, before that Mitchell's making 70 million, Evan Mobley will also be making over 60 million. So like those two guys together are 130. And I realize like the cap is going to be a completely different number that year, but like that's two big time numbers for a 34-year-old Donovan Mitchell. And, you know, I mean, Evan Mobley will still be in his prime, but like he has to be your second best player if he's going to be making 60 million when Mitchell's making 70 million.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, this thing is now the Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell show long term, and they need Mobley to take a leap for it to work, in my opinion. Like that's where this sits now. Look, I think that their offseason is also somewhat incomplete because I think that they're still going to maybe try to find an opening for Dennis Schroeder. Obviously, they're in the mix for the Peyton Watson restricted free agency sign-in trade stuff. They are certainly been rumored with Jonathan Kuminga as well. So on some level, they have to do something here at the end of the day. But, you know, maybe Max Strus is a move. Like, who knows, right? But I think that the issue here for everything with Cleveland is that they got worse while other teams around them got better.
Yep.
And that does not really help them at all.
For sure.
So, yeah, that's a D+ for me for Cleveland. Not a great grade. Okay. Next up, the Indiana Pacers. Very quiet offseason. They lose Cam Jones in that deal to get Braden Smith. They brought back Micah Potter. They lost their first-round pick in the Ivica Zubac deal. The Zubac deal is obviously their big acquisition, along with Tyrese Halliburton. They signed Larry Nance and they signed Kelly Oubre Jr. I think the Oubre move was totally fine. I think it's a player that makes a lot of sense for them as like a, a player that matches kind of what Ben Mathurin did, except better and more aggressive on defense. I think that with the Pacers, it's all dependent on how Halliburton looks coming off the Achilles injury. If he's back to being himself, this team's going to be a top 4 team in the East and will be a real threat in the playoffs because they are a nightmare to deal with in the playoffs because of Halliburton, because of how quickly they play.
Yeah.
If not, then like I think it's, you know, if he's 80%, I think this team like might be a play-in team. So is Halliburton the dude or is he not the dude? I'm guessing he's going to be back. Like I think he's going to be fine. It really is he a guy that had a certain level of a first step, and if you take that back just slightly, it's a problem? Or is he a guy that like it doesn't really matter because he's so good at changing speeds that he's able to make it work? I'm betting on the brain. I'm betting on the shooting ability with Halliburton. Like I'm totally comfortable with that. But if he's 80%, like they're probably a play-in team. And if he's 100%, they're one of the elite teams in the East again.
Yeah. I mean, I gave it a B- because to me, like there just wasn't a whole lot this summer. Their move was at the deadline. I mean, I guess people could knock them because as part of that deal, they ended up not having the number 5 overall pick. Like I would hear that out. I think Zubac is like just a really good fit for them. But I do think that's another part of this is how does he work within this, you know, offensive scheme, playing with Halliburton, all of that. But as good as I think he is, assuming Halliburton comes back, healthy, and as he progresses throughout the year, gets back to full strength, I love that starting lineup. I think they still have a really good bench, especially adding Kelly Oubre and what he's going to do. And I wonder if they don't have some contracts that could be moved along with some future draft capital if they needed to give another rotation piece if they find themselves in that situation. So, the offseason, again, there wasn't a whole lot here, but this is a team that I think is going to make noise in the East if Halliburton's healthy.
Yeah. It's really what it all comes down to. I like the Oubre signing. I think that made total sense to me. Do I wish that this team was just willing to go into the tax? Yes, undeniably. Like, I think they would be a better team for it if they had been willing to go into the tax to sign Miles Turner. That would have set themselves up for so much success moving forward. Obviously, they are slated to be a tax team, but they're only $6 million over. I mean, they're moving like Ben Shepherd and Quentin Jackson away from being under the tax, right? Or just Jarris Walker or something. Like, I'm going to bet you they get under the tax by the end of the year.
I say, or the other potential is like moving Obi Toppin for a player that makes $6 million less than Obi Toppin, right? Like trading Obi Toppin's $15 million for a player that makes $7.5 million, in some way. So yeah, we'll see how that ends up going.
Yeah, no, we'll see. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, I'm not. It's a B- for me. Like, it's just like a total middle of the pack grade.
Yep.
All right. I made Bryce wait for the last team. They always tell us on this show, we talk about the Pistons every show. Like, we do the Pistons way too often. Well, I made the Pistons go last year so that we didn't always talk about the Pistons.
I mean, in fairness, they won 60 games last year and were the first in the East. So
probably a good reason to talk about the Pistons. Let's be honest. Okay. So they traded Isaiah Stewart basically for the right to move up a few slots to take Ibuka Okori, even though it was two separate deals. Traded Karis LeVert for Taurean Prince, Gary Harris in 2 seconds. They re-signed Javonte Green and Kevin Huerter to a strange deal. They brought in John Collins on a 3-year deal via sign-in trade. I believe 1 year of that is guaranteed. Correct, Bryce?
Correct.
Traded 2 second-round picks for Isaiah Joe. And then they lost Tobias Harris in free agency to the Spurs. They traded Marcus Sasser to the Mavericks. That's everything, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit lower on this offseason. I think they probably got worse, is where I'm at. I think losing Tobias Harris is a big deal. They still have the Jalen Duren thing hanging over this. It feels like Jalen Duren's going to be back in some respect. It's just what the contract looks like, in my opinion. You just don't hear as much in terms of like sign and trade options. And really there like isn't a sign and trade option out there for him unless the Hornets decide to use their $40.7 million trade exception and give up real assets for Jalen Duren. Like, there's just not really a deal out there right now for him. So I assume he's going to be back in some respect. I think John Collins to Tobias Harris for what this team specifically needs is a downgrade, personally. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that.
No, I think in general, John Collins is an upgrade. You actually brought up a good point in terms of what Tobias Harris does and what this team needs being more valuable to this team than what John Collins does well. So like, I will hear that part out in terms of Harris being able to kind of create offense and then run the offense through him and all of those different things. I think it was a very fair point and an angle I hadn't thought of. So I listen, I'm a C on their offseason. They did not do what I was hoping they would do, expected them to do, wanted it. Like, I thought this was the offseason to go make a big move, to go get a number 2 option. And, you know, like the reports were out there about Austin Reeves. I don't know how true or not that was. Didn't happen. Maybe the Trey Murphy asking price is just way too high and unreasonable. I don't know. But I thought after a 60-win season, losing the playoffs, this was the time to go ahead and, if you were trading future firsts or locking in future cap or whatever, I thought this was the offseason to do that. And they didn't for whatever reason. Maybe they tried and just weren't able to do it. I don't know. But because of that,
I mean, they very clearly tried to go get a number 2. Like, they were very clearly rumored with Austin Reeves.
Right? Yeah, sure.
So like they very clearly were out there trying to get like the guy that they thought was the number 2 option.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, we talk about this all the time. You have to be able to execute it, right? And again, maybe if you got a chance to sit down with Trajan Langdon, he could walk you through, well, like this didn't happen because of this reason, and this didn't happen because of this. Like it may all be fair.
Yeah. I think it was so contextual. Like, I think that they just missed on certain guys and got somewhat unlucky at the end of the day. Like, it's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes on it. But what I would say is that if I was them, I probably would have just retained Tobias Harris at the end of the day versus John Collins. And given that Tobias Harris, like his contract is, I believe like he got both of those years guaranteed. Like I would probably rather have Tobias Harris on a 2-year guaranteed deal where he's the number 2 option than John Collins on a 1-year guaranteed deal where he's now probably the number. Is he like he's not a perimeter creator, so like I don't know, he's gonna like split minutes weirdly with like Jalen, or like split usage weirdly with Jalen Duren. I feel like where like there's real overlap in what those guys do on the court.
It will be interesting for sure. I will say this, I think they, one reason I stay a little more positive is I do like the floor spacing they added, like having both Duncan Robinson and Isaiah Joe on this team, I think is a really, really positive thing. There is some real depth, even though like I like that they brought back Javonte Green. You kind of alluded to it with the Kevin Huerter, whenever you mentioned them bringing him back, that was honestly the biggest contract, even though it's not massive, but it was the one I understood the least in terms of how they got to that number, and it being 3 years. And it's like Duncan Robinson and John Collins essentially got 1 year, 3-year deals with 1-year guarantees.
Huerter's a 2-year, it's a 2-year, like
it's a $2.5
million deal.
So what I will say that nobody wants to hear is they do have themselves in a position where they can still go make a big move. There is a lot of expiring money on the cap sheet. They have all of their first round picks moving forward. They still are plus second round picks. But I assume at this point, they're just going to play it into the season and then they'll figure that out. Ultimately, this all comes down to one thing, though. Like, what is the Jalen Duren number? And then if they get that done, or when they get that done, what is the Asar Thompson number? To me, that makes or breaks this offseason, because if those two numbers could together come in too high and you lock that in as your trio to win a championship, I think that would be a mistake. If those two numbers together come in low enough where you can add an actual number 2 option, then I think it ends up being okay.
So this is where I'm probably gonna like a little bit push back, but not anything crazy. Because like, again, I think they just got unlucky. Like, I think that I don't know, like not being able to convince Austin Reeves to come to Detroit instead of staying in LA. I don't know. And I feel like they didn't like hang on Austin Reeves. He signed super early, so it's not like they didn't have other options. Is what it is, right? Cade Cunningham's going to be making $54 million. Let's say Jalen Duren's making 40 next year.
Okay.
Fair, right?
Sure.
Even if it's a shorter term deal.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Like, let's say it's 40. So that's $93 million. Let's say they don't do an extension for Asar Thompson and they try to like play this flexibly. His cap hold is still $33 million for next season.
Number 5 pick changes that a lot. Yep.
Right. So you're then at 126 guaranteed. The Huerter deal takes you to 134 guaranteed. Okori takes you to 139 guaranteed. You're going to want to keep Dennis Jenkins because Dennis Jenkins is like cheap. So That's $5 million of a cap hold on the books as a restricted free agent next year. So that's like 150 or so on the books. I'm just ballparking this, right? Like, let's call it 150 on the books. And they still have, is that everybody else? I think that's everybody, right? They still have the Ron Holland number.
Holland.
And I'm assuming they're going to opt in on the Holland 11 million because they should, right? So that's like 160, let's call it, against the cap of 174. They're not that flexible, is my point. Like, this summer was the summer where you probably had to make a move. This was the one where you had the real flexibility. And even if you're overpaying, or if you're breaking up your core with Asar and Duran, trading one of those two, that made more sense to me than what they did.
Here's what I'll say also, Sam, is you didn't mention Isaiah Joe or Duncan Robinson in that. And you have to keep one of those next offseason also. Like, I realize that Joe has a team option and Duncan Robinson is non-guaranteed, but like, to your point, in terms of not having real flexibility next offseason, you didn't mention any of Duncan Robinson, John Collins, who just signed to let Tobias Harris go, or Isaiah Joe, or Paul Reed, who now is extremely important for this team because you traded away Isaiah Stewart, and Paul Reed is the backup center for Detroit. So yeah, I agree. Well, I guess what I was saying is I think they have one more window at the deadline to go make a move. But if you go into next offseason, I think it starts to become harder. And I'm a little nervous what those numbers end up with Duran and Asar. Like, I don't think that Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duran, Asar Thompson is the core of the Detroit Pistons competing for an NBA championship. Like, that's just my opinion.
As a top three, I agree.
Correct.
So someone in the comments just brought up the name that I would be looking at if I was them.
Okay.
We've talked about him on this show. Right.
Yes. Yes.
He's the next guy to me that is like the Austin Reevesy, like, okay, let's try and go see if we can get him out of the place that we're going, or the place he is currently in Milwaukee. And let's go he's a perfect fit with Cade Cunningham because he can really guard, he can shoot, he can be a secondary creator. Like, that's the player I'm now going all in on. Like, if they ask for like Ron Holland in our first round pick for Ryan Rollins, I'm probably pretty comfortable doing that, to be honest. Like, I get that. Like, I really like Ron Holland defensively. We have top defenders, as we said at the top of the show, coming. I don't have Ron Holland on my top 25 defenders league wide list, but like, he's on the long list for me.
Yeah.
Of like, I listed out like 40 guys.
I was going to say 40, 50, probably, right?
Yeah. Like, Ron Holland was in that like 40 group for
Sure.
me of like great defenders league wide, and has a chance, I think, to jump into that top 25 group by the time he's like 24 or so, 25 years old. But man, like, they need another creator. And Rollins is a good defender who can create, who can shoot, who can kind of do it. Like, I'm giving up whatever I've got to give up to get Ryan Rollins on this team if I'm them.
What about Case and Wallace? I know that's another name that's gotten brought up. Let's just assume Oklahoma City thinks they have to decide between Wallace and AJ Mitchell, or end up at that point. Like, that's another one.
That's another great name. All in.
I think Rollins' offensive potential is actually a little more exciting than Wallace for that role, I think. But obviously, Case and Wallace defensively compared with Asar Thompson is ridiculous. But yes, I agree. Like, this is the move that they need to execute sometime. Like, whether it's in season or if they could still do it next offseason, Rollins would be an unrestricted free agent at that point, which would now complicate things, obviously, make it a little bit more difficult. So, but yes, this is the type of player that I think they're missing, and I think they have to acquire to really maximize whatever true championship window that they want to open.
And again, I will say, at some point, to me, it might result in a choice between Asar Thompson and Jalen Duran.
Sure.
Because I think it's still just really, really hard to end up in a situation where you don't have, or where two guys are out there who are non-shooters in the playoffs.
Yep.
It's just exceptionally difficult to make it work. Like, if I was them, I personally probably would have cashed in on one of those two this summer in a trade. For me, it would have been Duren in a sign and trade. Like I would have hit the Lakers early and been like, hey, is that offer that you're offering for Walker Kessler, is that available for Jalen Duren? Like, are you willing to do 2 picks and 2 swaps for Jalen Duren? Think about how differently we would feel about their offseason if they ended up 2 picks, 2 swaps for Jalen Duren, and then they have all of that draft capital to go out and go find a starting center and a like secondary creator with a roster that isn't as congested on the court for Cade.
Yeah, the Duren, I agree with you. Like it is such an interesting. I think they can make it work. To your answer earlier, I don't think that they can be number 2 and number 3 best player behind Cade Cunningham. I think there has to be another player that in there. I think that those two guys can make it work, but it obviously makes it a whole lot easier. My thing is always, I would have a Sar over Duren as well if I had to choose one or the other. The problem is, if you're choosing a Sar in this scenario and you're trading Duren, you can't just go trade for another non-floor spacing big, and there's not a ton of floor spacing bigs available all the time. And so like that just makes things a little bit complicated as well.
I mean, if I told you it was like Miles Turner and Ryan Rollins for Jalen Duren in like a pick or something.
It's something I've thrown out to people privately. Like just having conversations.
I don't know what the difference would be in value between Rollins and Turner. Honestly, it could just be those two for Duren. Like I think
it's a really interesting idea. Like to bring in the stretch big and then the number 2 option in Rollins. Like I think it's a really, really interesting idea.
And on top of all of this, they lose Isaiah Stewart this summer too, for the ability to move up and take Abuko Okori. Isaiah Stewart was really good.
Yep.
Like, I get that he didn't have the best playoffs, but Isaiah Stewart in the regular season was probably one of the, I don't know, 10 to 12 best per minute defenders in the NBA. Like, I haven't decided yet if he's going to be on the best defenders list in the league, just because of like the minutes played factor, but like he might be on the list.
He's like
best defenders in the
him
league.
And Chris Dunn are kind of like share this. Dunn as the perimeter guy and Stewart as the big man.
Yeah. Like it was the best defenders list is very hard every year, like trying to figure all this out. But like losing Stewart is a big deal to me. He's an awesome defensive basketball player.
I agree. That was not a decision that I guess agreed with, or however you want to say it. While I do think, Paul Reed is very good and has been very good for Detroit. Yeah. My argument is just like, you got worse at the center. That was one of your biggest strengths, was the trio of Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Paul Reed. And then now that is Jalen Duren, hopefully happy. Paul Reed now is the backup center, and Tolu Smith. Like, you just can't convince me they didn't get worse in regards to the center rotation. And that's tough whenever you didn't have any big improvements elsewhere, other than, again, I do at least want to be fair. Like, I do think the potential floor spacing, the depth of the floor spacing did get better.
Yeah. No, I agree. I am generally in agreement. So I went with like a C for the Pistons.
That's where I was at.
Yeah, I did not go super high on them. Look, I get it that John Collins has been productive offensively. I guess, like, where are you on the Collins fit? And this can be where we close it, because it was their big offseason acquisition. I don't know what he does that totally fits with Duren. Like, I think that they work when they're separate, and I really like the idea of Cade having like a second lob threat out. Like, they have 48 minutes of lob threats, which is really important to me. But I don't love the combo of Duren and Collins together, I guess.
And that is one thing I should bring up, I guess, is Collins can play some small ball 5 in a way that we never really saw Harris do. So, like, I should give that credit to the center rotation. Generally, I was supportive. I shouldn't say supportive. Like, I was fine with that decision. Like, this was okay. again, you bringing up the idea of Collins not really being a creator the way Harris was, I do think is important. I think that's important to bring up, because where is that going to come from if it, does Asar take more of that? Danish Jenkins, can Abuka Okori do it as a rookie? Like those are the options to take on what Tobias Harris was doing. And so if Collins can just come in and be a play finisher and those type of things, I actually think it's going to be okay. But if we get into a situation where, man, like they really need somebody to create a look for himself or his teammates, that's where I think it could really end up, looking like not the right decision.
It's now like a big bit of pressure on one of Dennis Jenkins or Ibuka Okori.
Yep.
Like one of those two really needs to take a big jump into, oh no, I'm averaging like a consistent 13 to 15 points a game. Yep. Something like that. Right. Like I really like Dennis Jenkins. I think he can be that guy for what it's worth. Dennis averaged 9 points a game last year, but it was a bit roller coastery throughout the season. I think you would agree on offense, at least. He does bring it, like with disruptive, aggressive defense, at least, even if he's skinny. But I think that the big difference here to me is that there's a jump going from being Dennis like the third or fourth option on the court at all times to no, like there are going to be times now where Dennis, like in a bench unit, might have to be the number one option at times.
Oh no, I think for sure that's going to be the role for him in a bench. And here's the other thing that has to happen. For as bad as Jalen Duren was offensively in the playoffs, he was good in the regular season. Like
he was awesome in the regular season.
He has to do that again,
NBA in my opinion, but like was a top 30 player in the league in the regular season.
100%. He has to do that again. Or this becomes even bigger an issue in terms of, because he averaged almost 20 a game last year. You know what I mean? Like that can't go back to 15 this season in the regular season, right? Like it ended up at 10 in the playoffs or whatever it was. So that's another big part of this with Duren as well, is he has to be that guy, which like all credit to him, but that was the first year where we've seen that. So hopefully he can do that consistently and then, figure out the playoff aspect of it.
Yep. Okay. Bryce, we've gotten through the final 13. This is good. Someone brought up Portland as a trade partner. That's actually kind of fun. Stretch bigs and lead guards for Portland.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like, could you do something like Drew Holiday and one of the weirdo stretch bigs like Carlson or Potter in season for something? That's kind of interesting to me. Portland
I tried to do it.
Actually do match up well.
I tried to do a Drew Holiday trade the other day, but like actually, like you just have to add so many. One thing they don't have is any like bigger expiring numbers. So I still think Norm Powell, like that's like, I think that was my thing, was they didn't even make a move for a Norm Powell or like a, 1 year type of number 2 scoring option. So like I'd feel even better if, like, I think Duncan Robinson for Norm Powell works or something like that. So I don't know. We'll see.
And like, look, they don't really have a great mechanism to get in on the Peyton Watson thing because they only have the $15 million trade exception for Isaiah Stewart. Like, that's really the only way they can do it, because otherwise the Nuggets would be staying over the second apron, basically. I mean, they should try this, right?
I think
Peyton
so.
Watson.
Yeah. Again,
like,
I've had
willing to do like a 1 year guaranteed, 3 year, $50 million contract with first year guaranteed, and then he gets to hit free agency again or something. Like, there's not really a way to do that, I guess, because it's a 3 year structure, not a 2 year structure for a sign and trade. But like something like a shorter term deal, give Peyton Watson like the ability to hit free agency again early. Like, they should be trying to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've brought it up before, and I would be willing to give up a player, like a rotation player, and a first round pick for Peyton Watson. So if that got it done, I mean, I've honestly even thought about like could they try to get in on the Benedict Mathurin restricted free agency, like to just bring in somebody that gives them a little bit more something off the bench in terms
Actually,
of
not terrible. Again,
like,
I wouldn't want to do it for more than 2 years, but yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I haven't thought about them for that, but if they wanted to give him that Isaiah Stewart like trade exception number, that wouldn't. And if they give Duren 40 million, they would have 15 million, or I think they had 17 million away from the second apron. So they would have the ability to use the Isaiah Stewart number if they wanted to.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. They're over the roster right now, so they'd have to figure out some of that. But yeah,
Mathurin probably makes more sense just financially because I don't think Watson's going to want to take 15. But Mathurin, that's a good name. I would probably do that if I was them right now, to be honest.
And that's what one thing I need to go back to the order of events this offseason. One thing I got frustrated by was they used their non-tax MLE to bring in Isaiah Joe.
Correct. They screwed this up.
I think so, Sam. Maybe somebody can tell me why they did it this way, but the non-tax
LME, they did it this way. For
yeah.
what it's worth, the reason they did it this way is they didn't know they had the Karis LeVert deal done.
Okay. So like
that's why, like they didn't know that was going to be on the table, but there wasn't really I mean, look, I'm sure the other teams in that massive deal that they did with the Isaiah Joe deal were like kind of itching to execute it, right? And then like the next day, the Karis LeVert thing like presented itself from the Bucks, right? Or like 2 days later or whatever. I think that's the way that the order of operations worked. But if I was them, I would have been trying to push to do like, hey, let's get the Isaiah Joe deal into the Isaiah Stewart trade exception.
Correct.
And then have the non-taxpayer mid-level available for free agents and trade exception as opposed to just trade exception. It's a small deal though.
But if you were actually interested in Mathurin, it changes, right? Because then you could just go sign Mathurin to an offer sheet. So small, to your point, it probably is a small thing, but that's been a little frustrating that the order of operations there and not having the non-tax MLEs and the flexibility that offers. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, Bryce, we got to get out of here. Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, Motor City Hoops on Twitter, Blue Sky, Substack, Game Theory Substack, and then obviously Game Theory Podcast here with Sam Vecenie. Appreciate all of your support throughout the off season. And as Sam mentioned, we have contract conversations coming up and the all defense episodes, which are always a lot of fun.
Yep. Next episode is going to be a live show on Thursday where we break down the upcoming extension class for October, which is the 2023 draft class. So Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, Anthony Black, Asar Thompson, all those guys, in addition to the many other first round picks that are eligible. Not as many like potential extension candidates in that class is what is normal. So it will be fun though to talk about all those good young players league wide. Then the next 2 weeks are all defense. So we're really, really excited about that. Yeah, that's all we got for the show today. We appreciate everyone for coming through. We appreciate everyone for hanging out, being here. We will be back later this week. Until next time, we'll talk soon.